Part 15. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 141. Landau Manor, Study. It should be noted here that the Landau family has many study rooms. Leaving aside the big house, Veronica's exclusive villa has 3 study rooms. The exclusive villa under construction for Master Wayne also has 3 study rooms. There are many rules in aristocratic homes, and the bound Bible is as thick as a book. Take the study room as an example. There are so many study rooms that have a special purpose, not just to show off their wealth. It's not because there are too many rooms in the house. Without a few more study rooms, the empty rooms cannot be accommodated. If the study is regarded as a reception room, study rooms of different specifications correspond to guests of different levels, such as strangers, ordinary friends, partners, friends, best friends, and VIPs. The butler will lead the guests into the corresponding study room according to their status. The master and his wife have a separate study room apart from the reception room. VIPs cannot enter. It is generally used for discussing important matters among family members. For example, today, the housekeeper Megan stood at the door of Madame's study, pricking up her ears to eavesdrop on the conversation inside. She could always eavesdrop. In the study, Sci-fi set up a soundproof barrier like a thief and even closed the curtains. Wayne rolled his eyes. There was an spy planted by Lao Deng outside. "Teacher, if you are like this, you may have misunderstood me. Let's open the curtains, there's nothing we can't see. I have a wonderful treasure that cannot be seen in person, specially prepared for you." Sci-fi raised her eyebrows, wanting to give the student a surprise. Using her own magic power as the key, she took out a wooden box from the secret compartment of the study. It was the size of a dressing case, beautifully carved, and inlaid with an emerald. Wayne poked his head in and smelled opportunity. Because he was his own teacher, he guessed that the treasure in the box was not the one he lost many years ago, and it would be difficult to return it to its original owner today. Ziffy opened the wooden box, and green light bloomed, making Wayne's face turn green. Just like the classic serving stage, the chef runs out of white phosphorus and the shine disappears. The green light gradually faded, and Wayne saw the treasure in the wooden box, a card in a photo frame, the size of a palm, depicting a large tree with a gorgeous crown and strong roots. What a treasure this is, just a card. Wayne looked at Sci-fi in confusion, who raised the corner of his mouth and said quite proudly, "My sister brought the treasure back from Paris. I spent a lot of effort to get it." Seeing that Wayne was still puzzled, Ziffy stopped guessing and said bluntly, "The cards come in a set. It is said that they were forged by the goddess herself and kept in the headquarters of the Church of Nature. Unfortunately, they were later lost. The church spent hundreds of years to find them. Gather together. So, the goddess of nature is still a poker player? Do you have a colorful, angular hairstyle that makes you look good at playing cards?" Wayne complained in his heart and whispered, "Teacher, this is a sacred object of the church. Is it really okay to keep it privately? What does it matter? If no one knows, it doesn't count as a secret." Sci-fi had no regrets. In order to obtain this card, she sacrificed countless enemies and returned them to the church. Wasn't the blood of these people shed in vain? She had big breasts, so Wayne decided to trust her once, and because she was a teacher, Wayne decided to follow the teacher's lead when he was a student. He would keep the treasures he picked up and never hand them over. Sci-fi really didn't feel guilty at all. During the years when she withdrew from the sainthood campaign, she was ignored and ignored. She was treated like a minion wherever she went. Her position in the church depended entirely on the face of her asshole husband. As arrogant as she is, she vowed to take back everything she lost with her own hands, plunged into the scalpel mechanism, and fought on the most dangerous front line. This is also the reason why I didn't turn in the cards I got. According to Sci-fi, the church treated her unfairly first, and she withheld the holy relics later. In the final analysis, it was the church's fault. She was not targeting her own beliefs, nor was she seeking revenge against the church, nor was she being petty. She was just seeking justice for herself. Wayne nodded seriously and said that the teacher was right. This had nothing to do with women being petty, but everyone would take revenge. If it were him who suffered the same grievance, it would be easy for him to withhold the sacred objects. He dared to pretend to be the devil and empty the church's warehouse. Your life essence has been fused. The next step is to separate Kong and I to condense into a god. Just like the fusion of life essence, this process is very difficult and requires the help of external forces. Sci-fi reiterated the importance of God. God is faith and the guide of the magician. It comes from the void and the self and is closely connected with the magician's thinking and learned knowledge. An ordinary magician can split the sky and condense it into a god. I only need a senior to guide me, but Wayne's bloodline is too strong. Even if Sci-fi is very confident in her own strength, she dare not guarantee that there will be no risks in the whole process. If the child grows crooked and his life ends in gold, where will Veronica cry? Veronica, laughing. Your life essence is too powerful. Ordinary external forces cannot split your six-pointed star. You must use holy objects. Sci-fi solemnly confessed, I will help guide you to reorganize your emptiness and self through the divine power contained in the holy objects. You are not a bystander in this process. Please calm down and understand it. It is very important for the hexagram to break through the silver stage. You may be able to understand it to your own unique magic of belief. Wayne nodded solemnly and sat cross-legged on the sofa. This posture was quite strange to Sci-fi at first sight, but now she is used to it. She placed the wooden box in Wayne's hand, hold the card, follow the training formula I taught you, and use magic power to attack Sarah and me. Sister will guide you. Divine power is injected into your body, and with your talent, if you are lucky. Halfway through her words, Sci-fi stopped talking. Her face was still hurting, so there was no need for another slap. Teacher, I can draw on my divine power without your guidance. You may not believe it, but I am a professional in this area. Wayne glanced at the Book of Greed, who was so impatient that he was rubbing his hands together to get ready for a feast. Wayne took a deep breath, picked up the card and held it in his hand. The invisible tentacles rolled out and plundered the greenery in the card. In the card, there seemed to be wind blowing through it, awakening the sleeping giant trees. Those leaves, blown by the wind, dance like green butterflies, shining with emerald luster, dazzling and breathtakingly beautiful. In the dark, there seemed to be a swaying sound slowly floating out. Sci-fi was stunned for a moment. As soon as Wayne held the card, the latter responded. Just like the terrifying elemental affinity, the divine power also responded to Wayne. Goddess above me, could this boy be your illegitimate son? Sci-fi quickly shook her head to dispel the disrespectful and blasphemous thoughts in her mind. She quickly came behind the student and pressed her hands on his shoulders to help him sense the divine power. It's a bit of a disservice. Book of Greed was enjoying his meal when he suddenly noticed that the waiter's speed in serving food had slowed down. Unhappy, he banged the table and the bench to ask Wayne to drive out the idlers. There are so many people waiting around, she's treating me, how would this table be without her? Although Sci-fi was somewhat of a troublemaker and did restrict the flow of divine power, without her help, Wayne would not be able to do what he does today. The Book of Greed does not eat everything, it does not eat anything it has eaten before, it does not eat side dishes and supplements, it only eats new dishes and essences, and does not even look at useless additives. Wayne, don't be in a daze, practice according to the formula. Sci-fi warned, guiding Wayne's magic power to impact the hexagram. The essence of life has been condensed and cannot be shaken. The huge magic power impacts the last two corners of the hexagram, the sky and me. Perhaps because the edge hexagon was too stable, the process was not smooth. Wayne spent a lot of effort and failed in the first impact. He put down the card and told the Book of Greed not to eat. He had finished eating all the meat, and he was sending the beggar away with soup and water. The Book of Greed stopped, and in just a short while, it had already eaten almost everything on the card, and it didn't care at all about the leftovers. Your life essence is very stable, and your foundation is very solid. It is normal to fail the first time. If you learned the magic burst at the silver stage, you would have succeeded just now. Sci-fi encouraged the student and asked the latter to hold the card and start the second try. The effect is average. All the good things in the cards have been swept away by the Book of Greed. From the outside, the divine power is still the same, and it has not been weakened at all and does not affect its use. But to Wayne's hexagram and me, these leftovers are waste. Cannot attract them at all. The second attempt still ended in failure. Successful, another big step forward. Sci-fi patted the student's shoulder and encouraged, "You learn quickly. The second time you hit the hexagram, you disperse Sarah and I after a few more times, you can concentrate." That's probably not possible. Wayne is not very optimistic. He knows everything about it. All the good things have been taken away by the Book of Greed. Kong, I will not pay attention to the remaining divine power. According to his situation, the success rate is highest when the divine power of the holy object is at its purest, that is, when the card is held for the first time. If you fail the first time, you will never succeed no matter how many times you try. Book of Greed, I'm fine, hiccup. Wayne. If you feel like you are carrying a heavy load, someone must be riding on you. The years are quiet. Coach, can you change the golden finger? As expected by Wayne, several subsequent attempts ended in failure. Even though he always encouraged failure as the mother of success and asked students not to give up, it still didn't help. Success can only be conceived by success, not failure. If she cannot give birth to success, she is not even a stepmother. Wayne kept failing. After more than 10 times in a row, Sci-fi couldn't help but start to doubt life, muttering, "It shouldn't be. Is the original bloodline so exaggerated? Even holy objects are not worthy of being used as an external force for guidance." Sci-fi frowned and thought hard, wondering where to find a more powerful holy object. Seeing that the teacher was worried about him, Wayne felt deeply ashamed. The teacher had already done a good job, and the problem was with him. Even if he found another holy object, he would only end up eating the Book of Greed. Hey, the Book of Greed. Wayne's eyes lit up. Yes, what kind of sacred object do you want? Isn't it the divine power of nature? There are many of them in the Book of Greed. Thinking of this, he crossed his legs and closed his eyes, looking at the big eyeball of the Book of Greed. After switching the perspective, the big eyeball looked at the smaller eyeball on the side. This eyeball represents nature. Every time the Book of Greed swallows, the divine power related to nature will make this eyeball brighter. Following Wayne's operation, the small eyeballs representing nature bloomed, reflecting the pure power of nature. The green light soaked Wayne's magic power, turning him into a humanoid little green light, which made Sci-fi's eyes almost open. It won't open. Sci-fi was shocked and looked quickly towards Wayne's hand. The card glowed with green light. Then she put her hands on Wayne's shoulders and spoke quickly. The holy objects did not release their full power several times before. This is a rare opportunity. It will definitely work out this time. Wayne did not hear the teacher's words clearly. Under the violent impact of magic, Kong and I were unable to maintain stability. The 2 points of light collapsed into sporadic light points. Under the operation of the formula, part of the wrapped natural divine power slowly took shape. The light of the 6-pointed star dissipated in Wayne's body, and was replaced by a hazy cross star. God. Life. Empty. Me. The 4 elements each occupy a corner, corresponding to each other, and around the cross star, the original hexagonal frame is reorganized into a quadrilateral. Wayne looked closely and saw that the brightest point of the cross star was the light of life, followed by the light of God, while the light of emptiness and me was the dimmest and least obvious because they were drained. Teacher, I succeeded. Wayne was overjoyed and turned his head to look at Sci-fi, but was blocked halfway through his words. Wayne. Wayne, you succeeded. Sci-fi grabbed the student's head with one arm and rubbed it hard on his head, happy for him from the bottom of her heart. Wayne felt okay, the other party should have raised him as a son, but he had lived 2 lives and was in his 30s. He couldn't bear such a heavy mother's love and struggled to break free. Sci-fi smiled slightly and patted Wayne on the shoulder. Today, not only the student succeeded, but she, the teacher, also succeeded. Being on the scene, witnessing with his own eyes, the student's magic power has been dyed green, belonging only to the goddess of nature, and there is no need to worry about him being seduced by the seductive things outside. At least darkness and death can't seduce him, but the sun and moonlight can. Sci-fi was happy for a while, and then he began to sigh again. After all, it is difficult to guard against thieves at home. Smart enemies always appear in the image of teammates. Oh, and there is also the Free Mage Alliance. Sci-fi held Wayne and started a long speech. He talked a lot, from the dark history of the Sun and Moonlight Church to the unhumanity of the Free Mage Alliance, repeatedly instilling that there are no good people outside, trying to make the students more impressed. Teacher, your behavior is called KFC, which is wrong. Wayne listened with a serious face, without any rebuttal. There are not only no good people outside, but evil gods and demons everywhere. Fortunately, he is not afraid, and he is not a good thing either. Sci-fi nagging for an hour, because the student is too talented, no matter how much he says, he feels unsafe, and is thinking about whether to increase the intensity of the work for the student. As long as Wayne stays in the church, he won't go out of the gate, and no matter how many tricks there are outside, he can't do anything if he can't see them. It's a pity that he can't be locked up. The more talented you are, the more you should venture out. Sitting in the office will only make you mediocre. Sci-fi patted his head with a headache. He really wanted to bring the student to the office to be his assistant, but Flora was eyeing him at the division headquarters. What if the excellent student was marked by the other party? The child is still young, don't worry, he will definitely give it away for nothing. Sci-fi decided that it was necessary to remind him, and lowered his voice and said, I have an enemy in the church. I have been at odds with her for a long time. Her name is Flora Evelina. If you meet her in the future, remember to be careful. This woman is cunning. Don't be fooled by her. Isn't she a priest of the church? Wayne remembered where he heard this name. It seemed that in Geanhe County, the subordinates in the office were discussing the new leader. He didn't interrupt at the time and secretly collected information. She is the previous saint, and she has retired. Old woman. Sci-fi pouted. She liked the student's comments very much, but Flora was 1 year younger than her, so it was more appropriate to call her a little old woman. Practicing the Silver Cross means that Wayne has successfully been promoted to a Silver Mage. He did not feel the changes in himself directly. The strength after the breakthrough lies in perception, as if he can see more clearly. In the Silver stage, the magician has a more refined control of magic power. Sci-fi taught Wayne how to use magic to cover up his own breath so that others could not see his current stage of cultivation. This is very critical. Wayne has hidden magic power. Under the cover of his breath, he is no different from ordinary people when hiding in the crowd, which greatly increases the success rate of sneak attacks. Sci-fi did not teach magic skills such as maintenance and burst today. Take it step by step, and you can't chew too much. After teaching, Sci-fi took back the card, carefully hid it in the secret compartment of the study, and took out 2 books from the bookshelf and gave them to Wayne. Knowledge. On Wayne's silver cross, The emptiness representing knowledge is dim and dull. He needs to learn a lot of knowledge related to faith and magic to correspond to God. As mentioned before, the key to the silver cross is balance. None of the four elements can be left behind. Wayne left with the books in his arms. This study will be open to him. He can change after he finishes learning. After he finishes learning everything, Sci-fi will move the books from the church to his home. Master Wayne. The housekeeper Megan spoke faintly, appeared behind Wayne like a ghost, and handed over an invitation letter. What is this? The master's business party will be held on the 14th of next month. You are invited to attend. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 142. A series of question marks floated across Wayne's head, suspecting that Megan had sent the invitation to the wrong person. If he remembered correctly, Austin had never taken the initiative to talk to him. An invitation was sent out of the blue. Understand, the social waste has not changed its original intention. After acquiring the cement bucket factory, it is time to attack this little white flower again. After Megan left, Wayne flashed back to the study and placed the invitation in front of He with a serious face. Teacher, what do you think? Sci-fi also had a series of question marks floating on her forehead, and she read the invitation letter over and over again. Then you can participate, he won't eat you up. Wayne's eyes widened. He couldn't do it, but his big star could. Seeing the student's defensive look, Sci-fi smiled and waved her hand. I also have an invitation letter. My sister will be there when the time comes, so he won't dare to embarrass you. The stockings market is booming, and the clothing brand He Valentine under He's name has opened up the London market in one fell swoop and has become a fashion benchmark sought after by upper-class ladies. The factory that produces stockings, including the nylon patent, is owned by the Landau family company. Putting aside their relationship as husband and wife, Austin and He are business partners, so they naturally received the invitation. So, this is a formal business gathering. What if? I thought the meeting place was at the cement barrel processing factory by the River Tame, Wayne complained sharply. No, I've taught him a lesson. He doesn't dare to embarrass you again. Sci-fi was overjoyed and stepped back to watch. The fight between these two people was quite interesting. Teacher, I still don't understand. Since it's official, why did you invite me? Wayne was puzzled. It wasn't that he wouldn't go in a formal manner, but that he and Austin had no business dealings. The other party couldn't even look at him too much, so there was no need to invite him to a formal occasion. Well, maybe there are other reasons. Sci-fi pondered for a moment, then said with a smile, the Landau family is withering away. Apart from those useless distant relatives, as my student, you are one of the very few trustworthy people. Wayne was even more confused. He admitted that what he said made sense. After all, the future heir of the Landau family had to rely on his efforts. Austin would not always be at odds with him. Sooner or later, he would respectfully call him uncle. But are you giving up too quickly? Do you really not want to persist anymore? If Veronica is not pregnant, this behavior is tantamount to surrendering with a white flag 3 to 5 years in advance. It's too fast, the other side of the sea hasn't surrendered yet. Wayne suspected that the matter was fraudulent, and he was trying to judge others by himself. The invitation was not as simple as it seemed, but Hefei was steadfast in his promise. He could not continue to speak ill of her husband, so he could only secretly be on guard. By the way, teacher, I have some information for you. Wayne said, the news came from the detective agency a few days ago that the Moonlight Church is planning to build a new stronghold. It is currently in urgent need of funds and is looking for scapegoats. Sci-fi's face darkened. I know this matter has been settled. The Free Mage Alliance has mediated and acted as a guarantor for the Moonlight Church. It is not difficult to tell from Sci-fi's face that this matter is very complicated and involves many parties. The big cake of Windsor has to be redivided into spheres of influence. The Church of Nature was seriously injured by the Dark Knight and could not hold on to its base. In all likelihood, it would be cut off from them. Teacher, we are both in the Life Alliance, so it should be okay, right? Wayne asked tentatively. Sci-fi shook her head and said nothing. The Life Alliance was to fight against the belief in darkness and death. Internally, everyone still managed their own affairs. On the surface, they were peaceful, and competition always existed. Otherwise, she would not snatch Wayne away from the Moonlight Church. Maybe it has something to do with the appearance of the Death Knight. Sci-fi smiled bitterly. Coupled with the Dark Knight and the increasingly active Hell Evil God, the royal family does not want to consume its own power, so it can only delegate power to the Church. Congratulations to the Moonlight Church, they have seized this rare opportunity. Wayne listened to a few words and asked another question. Since the Free Mage Alliance is the mediator, why don't they provide funds or loans? There is a saying that goes well, borrowing money is not the purpose, establishing a debt relationship is the purpose. With this relationship, the Free Mage Alliance, no, the royal family can easily dictate to the Moonlight Church. Sci-fi shook her head. Perhaps it is the reason within the Free Mage Alliance. The chaotic beliefs are doomed to have different thoughts within the alliance. Teacher, this has nothing to do with whether your faith is confusing or not. You are bringing in private goods again. Before speaking, look at the card first, and then look at your saintly bestie. Your beliefs are single and devout, and you don't all have your own thoughts. Wayne had an understanding of the general situation, and then he was no longer interested. He was a silver mage, a little drifter who just drifted with the crowd. What could he do if he knew all the inside stories? He was not qualified to cause more troubles. Wayne House. Wayne stepped out of the car and handed the invitation letter to Furlaw, asking him to arrange his schedule and remember to remind him to attend the business party on the 14th. It was still early, so Wayne took the time to learn swordsmanship with Valkyrie. After taking a shower, he returned to the study alone. He was doing three things at once: reading a book to recharge his batteries, calling on the fire element to find a new base for his fellow villagers, and sensing the silver cross in his body. Sci-fi believes that among the silver cross, God is the most important, related to faith, and guides the future path of magicians. Free Mage Dean Schrödinger is just the opposite. He ranks God last in the silver cross. There cannot be a single belief, otherwise it will affect the future path. Wayne said he would not believe in one side, but he could not help but lean towards Planck's point of view. From his own point of view, the essence of life is too strong. In the pursuit of balance, only one goddess cannot satisfy him at all. He has already got the three goddesses of nature, sun and moonlight. The sun is also easy to solve. After wearing Valkyrie, the sun power stored in the Book of Greed is enough to use. Only the moonlight. It's not impossible. Establish a debt relationship with Chris. She even changed her skirt last night. Ask her to help steal a holy object. She shouldn't refuse. Wayne touched his chin and started dreaming before it got dark. He assumed that the power of moonlight was already in hand, and the thighs of the three goddesses could be held steadily, and then took out the dark ring from the drawer. Planck said that the dark ring could help Wayne gain the faith of darkness. The Book of Greed has tasted this ring, so it is not a problem to join the faith. The dark ring is no problem, and the shadow nightmare of the Death Knight is easier to get started. On the Book of Greed, the two small eyes of nature and death are the brightest, especially death, which is the brightest one. Can you bear to hug the thighs of 5 goddesses at a time? Wayne was in hesitation. The silver cross is about balance. The more thighs you hug, the higher the corresponding requirements of life, space, and self, especially life, the countless vast 4 elements. Just thinking about it makes his scalp numb. Moreover, after being promoted to Silver Mage, the appetite of the Book of Greed is getting bigger and bigger, and the consumption of 4 elements will also be an astronomical figure. I can bear it, but my fellow villagers can't. Wayne sighed, gritted his teeth and stomped his feet, and decided to make his fellow villagers suffer again. Believe it? With the 5 goddesses as the goal, I will contact Planck another day and ask him to return the ancient silver coins. After confirming the target, Wayne looked at the small eyeballs representing heaven and hell. For example, he meant that if he hugged the thighs of 5 goddesses at once, it would inevitably be a little bit of yin and yang. Should he borrow 2 rough men to neutralize it? Wayne knew that this idea was wrong and his fellow villagers couldn't stand it, but he couldn't help but get excited. It's all because of the Book of Greed. I'm getting more and more greedy now. Wayne suppressed his desire and postponed this issue. He first got the ancient silver coins to see where his upper limit was. If he still had some spare energy, he would still have time to join heaven and hell. He did it right away. Wayne picked up the phone and called Dean Planck. "Hello, Schrödinger, how did you know I was silver?" Wayne put the phone back. He couldn't call. His breakthrough to the silver stage had already shocked Sci-fi. He believed in his teacher, but he didn't have such high trust in Planck. We have to wait a little longer. Contact him after the party on the 14th of next month. Wayne rubbed his temples. He couldn't stop practicing. He couldn't be idle for half a month. His cultivation requires a lot of resources. He has been creating elemental restricted areas in London, and there is no guarantee that he will not be fined. It's time to take action against the fellow villagers outside the city. Dong dong dong. Wayne, it's time to eat. Willie's energetic voice came from outside the door. Wayne came back to his senses and found that he had been thinking for an hour and a half and missed the pickup today. Here we are. Wayne shouted, put away the dark ring, stood up and left the desk. It shouldn't be a big problem. I'm ready to borrow money. After dinner, the tutoring class started on time. Chris carefully quoted a price, 100,000 constitutional orders. You sold yourself for only 100,000. Wayne's eyes widened, and he found that Chris's eyes were even wider than his, so he changed his words and said, who am I looking down on? I'm famous for being righteous. You've already asked for it? 100,000 is too little. Add a little more. Chris was angry and amused. She didn't expose the pervert's little thoughts, although she was really pleased. She said, Wayne, 100,000 is already a lot. Although the wind can't blow the money in, it can blow the money away. The one who cooperated with you is the Moonlight Church, not me. It doesn't matter. If the church doesn't pay back the money, I will find you then. Wayne looked indifferent and joked, you are a nominal accountant in the detective agency, and you get a salary every month. If you calculate it, you can just pay off your debts by working for me for a lifetime, and you can even earn enough money for a coffin at the end. Chris was so confused that she looked at Wayne with a reproachful look. She still said that the situation was too complicated. Veronica and Willie were both good girls, and she didn't want to get involved. Also, she advised Wayne to close the net quickly and just pick one at random, otherwise he would have no friends in the future if he played 2 boats at the same time. After a discussion, Wayne raised the price, Chris bargained, and Wayne decided to invest 180,000. Wait until I go back and tell the priest, she will prepare an agreement, and then I will trouble you to go to the library to sign. No need, there are too many people and too many eyes. I am the pastor of the Church of Nature. If I am seen, I will be suspected of collaborating with the enemy. Just sign for me. Wayne waved his hand and it was settled. The Moonlight Church was too big, and he had no way to refuse to pay. It would be different if Chris signed. It would be best not to pay it back. 180,000 to buy a child's mother. This wave of blood profit is not a loss, the child will not starve, and he will not starve. Chris opened her mouth, things were more difficult than she thought. After thinking for a moment, she agreed. If Wayne's investment lost money, she would keep working to pay it back. After talking about investment, the two began today's class. Wayne looked at the textbooks that skipped from the 3rd grade to the 7th grade, which was the knowledge of the 1st grade of junior high school, and looked at Chris in surprise. If you have the ability, you can do it to the 2nd grade of junior high school. Chris smiled gently, but the teasing in the corner of her eyes still made Wayne blush. Exposed. The senior sister knew everything but still insisted on tutoring. It must have nothing to do with him being a creditor. From the detective's point of view, the most unlikely truth is that the senior sister is greedy for his body. Coincidentally, he thought so too, and ran to the two-way. The study course that night was very relaxed. Wayne still learned from one thing and applied it to other things. In the middle, Chris changed to the 11th grade high school textbook. Without teaching, Wayne was able to answer fluently. It turned out that he was already a college student. I'm so stupid. Chris leaned on the desk, propped up her head with one hand, and said speechlessly, Wayne, time is the most precious, you shouldn't waste your precious time on boring things. No, Chris, you are not boring at all. Chris blushed. This was too explicit, and she advised Wayne to take it back quickly. Besides, without the tutoring class, I wouldn't trust you so much. You can't complete the church's mission if you can't borrow money, right? Wayne touched the water and left, changing the subject. So, I didn't waste precious time, and you also helped the church through the difficulties. We all have a bright future. Chris blushed when she was interrupted. After thinking about it, it seemed to make some sense. Pa, how could it make sense? She glared at Wayne, packed up her textbooks and said, there are no classes tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. I will prepare for college courses. Don't hide it from me next time if something like this happens. You are a genius and can't waste an hour and a half every day. You are so nice. Don't say such things in the future. During class, I am the teacher and you are the student. Do you understand? Wayne. What's there to be embarrassed about? Wayne was not embarrassed, but Chris was embarrassed. Her face turned red and she picked up her textbooks and fled from the study. Commercial Street, Wayne Detective Agency. As usual, Wayne checked on the post, flipped through the documents of the past 2 days, and signed them one by one. Assistant Kelly handed over a notebook with a line of phone numbers on it. Detective Mona called in a hurry this morning. There was a small problem when investigating the commission of missing pets. She didn't say the specific situation, so you should contact her when you are free. Wayne's assistant is Veronica, but the eldest lady only pays wages and only goes to work when she is bored, so he specially hired an office assistant. The girl has just graduated and has not tasted the ups and downs of society. She insists on working overtime every day with full spirit. The last one to lock the door and the first one to open the door, rain or shine, Wayne voted her as the best employee of the month and promised to make her a regular employee immediately after the 3-month internship. What troubles can she encounter? Wayne frowned. A commission of missing pets actually stumped his 2 generals. Kelly, how many days has Detective Mona been investigating the missing pets? 5 days. Wayne was silent for a while. Mona is not an ordinary person. She is a member of the Vatican's tactical team. She has spent 5 days and still hasn't found a dog. Could it be that she encountered some devil again? Oh my God, why are there so many devils? Is hell organizing a team building? He picked up the phone and called the number. As expected, no one answered. After 2 times, the hotel owner said that the man with glasses and long legs had checked out and left in a hurry, as if he had met a creditor. Not in London, and being hunted by someone. This is a mess. Having exchanged butts, Wayne couldn't just leave it alone, so he called again. Kerr, it's me, Wayne. Do you remember your sister? How do I know how many sisters you have? I'm talking about Mona, the detective you recommended to me before. She's in trouble. While the body is still warm, let her family rescue it quickly. I can't, I'm busy making money, I don't have time to go, so I'll hang up first. You can treat me to dinner another day. Wayne hung up the phone. Mona, don't panic. He overcame many difficulties and helped call for reinforcements, and the Vatican's troops arrived soon. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 143. Boss, there is a detective named Kerr looking for you. Assistant Kelly knocked on the open office door and said to Wayne, who was writing quickly, he is in the conference room. Do you want to meet him? Wayne looked at his watch in confusion. It had only been an hour since he dialed Kerr's phone. Ask him to wait for another 10 minutes and say I'm very busy. It's best to find an excuse to let him leave. This guy is too troublesome. With that said, Wayne continued writing in his diary. Veronica's needs have been getting bigger and bigger recently, and she urges her to update her diary every time she practices. Unfortunately, his future diary has been written until March next year. There is no such thing as urging updates. What he writes is a documentary diary, focusing on the truth. No, it is not easy to make up random things without real experiences. Fortunately, he has developed a good habit of reading. He has been reading books recently, especially history books, and has learned a lot of jokes and routines. Otherwise, he might not be able to compile them if he doesn't have anything in mind. Half an hour later, Wayne put down his pen and placed the diary openly on his desk. He stood up, stretched his arms, and wandered toward the conference room. When he reached the door, he quickened his pace and apologized for being late. I've been waiting for a long time. I'm really busy. Let's go. We'll talk on the way. Where to go? Kerr was a little confused and didn't understand what was happening. Didn't you treat me to dinner? We just agreed on the phone. Wayne looked surprised. That's what you promised, but I didn't. Kerr put down the coffee cup in his hand. Your coffee is good. I thought it would be cheap, but I can't tell that you are quite willing to give it up. My clients belong to the upper class and are highly educated. Cheap coffee will bring down the quality of the detective agency. Once the client develops a disdainful attitude, when quoting, Wayne took it subconsciously, stopped talking mid-sentence, and said angrily, don't change the subject. Where are you going to eat? I won't invite you. What's the point of eating with two men? This is London. People will misunderstand you. Let my sister Mona do it for you. Kerr shrugged and looked at Wayne curiously. From your superficial aesthetic point of view, she is definitely a beauty, with a good figure and a good personality. Don't you plan to pursue her? How come you clerics behave like pimps? She is a nun, not Shen Yuan. Wayne rolled his eyes. Mona obviously came to the detective agency for a purpose. He only flirted with her when he had nothing to do. If he had this time, he might as well increase his favorability on the three ships. Regardless of this reason, he is very dedicated to love. On the day he first met Mona, he did not trigger the throbbing of first love and actively pursued her. There was no difference between this and lusting after her body. Bah, you are a bitch. Wayne, let me ask you, what's wrong with my sister? Who asked you to ask this? Is it from the Holy See? She is too old. She is in her 30s. I am different. I am still young and deserve an 18-year-old girl. Wayne was very perfunctory, hoping that Kerr would send a message to the Holy See. He was a serious person and would not be a womanizer. Instead of wasting time on him, it was better to focus more on London's devil. By the way, speaking of Detective Mona, I asked you to notify her family to collect the body. Have you notified her? Wayne reminded. Although I don't know what kind of trouble Mona encountered, being able to force a silver mage to pack up his clothes and run away is also a belief in hell at the beginning. I was notified, but no one cared. Kurt took a sip of coffee and said unhurriedly, the situation in her family is relatively complicated. Businessmen have been suppressed by local consortiums. They suffered heavy losses when they blocked competitors some time ago. The elders in the family are now bedridden, and they are hanging themselves. Ping, I don't have time to care about her. Speaking of which, he gave Wayne a look. That's it, you can experience the rest by yourself. Wayne was happy. Didn't you two reorganize your family? Her elders are your elders, so you are not worried at all. I'm not even a branch of the family, I don't have the right to inherit, and they don't like me very much. I left the family a long time ago and worked alone. I don't quite understand, please elaborate. Let's put it this way, it's like two detective agencies. One of them offered a higher price, so I jumped ship. What do you mean, you are also from the Free Mage Alliance? Wayne was stunned for a moment, and after thinking about it carefully, it was true that Kerr was mixed with the White Gloves Organization Association. The White Gloves Association belongs to the Windsor royal family and has an inseparable relationship with the Free Mage Alliance. Her elders couldn't get out of bed, so they paid me to help. The price was very high. I had no reason to struggle with the money, so I simply agreed. Kerr explained the reason why he came to Wayne. One person is not safe, so he took pay half of the commission fee and invite Wayne to go on the road together. After all, she is also your employee and has been exploited by you. For the Queen's sake, will you come with me to Eclipse Town? Why does it have to be me? Wayne raised his eyebrows. He tried to avoid it several times, but he still came to the door. Fishing? I'm afraid that won't work. I'm too busy. Half is already quite a lot. A total of 50,000 constitutions is bigger than the White Glove Association's list. You can't make so much no matter what you do. Kerr put down the coffee cup. That's not necessarily the case. I've been losing money on investments recently, so I picked up a mother for nothing and made a lot of money. Wayne groaned and waited for the price to increase. Speaking of which, he was ready to go out for a walk even if he didn't have 50,000 constitutions. He was promoted to silver and was in urgent need of help from his fellow villagers. He found a meditation array dedicated to the Golden Mage in Sci-fi's study. Overjoyed, he stayed up late and worked overtime, setting up 30 of them in the sewers in one night. Later it was cut down to 2. Afraid of baldness. The meditation array can call the 4 nearby elements to actively move closer, which is the elemental version of the spirit gathering array. Wayne has used it before, and the effect is outstanding and the experience is excellent. Meditation arrays dedicated to Golden Mage are more effective and are generally only set up in large strongholds of various churches. Due to their terrifying extraction effects, unauthorized use without permission is illegal and will be labeled as a black mage, making them a hotspot for bounty hunters. The darling of the chase. There is a saying that goes well, when you are gathering wool, you can't just catch one person. If the person is like that, even a blind person can see it. Rabbits also know not to eat grass beside their nests. With his method, Lundan will not change into the same person, but 30 spirit gathering arrays are 30 elemental forbidden areas, which is equivalent to about 30 patches of bald spots, and a blind man can still see it. 2 is enough, don't go too far. After all, the 4 elements are public resources after all. If you can't help it, if you have to do something illegal, it's not impossible. Find a place with few magicians, shoot him in a different place, and there's no way to trace him even if he's bald. Eclipse Town, where Mona is located, is good. It is 100 kilometers away from Lundan and close to Gyeonggi County. It has a small population and no church stronghold. There are several spirit gathering arrays along the way. Wayne originally planned to take a sip secretly when he went to Gyeonggi County, but now he has the same effect when going to Eclipse Town. Afterwards, he can go back to Gyeonggi County to check in, and he can save gas money on the trip. Perfect. But, you can't say this to Kerr. He costs hundreds of thousands every minute. If you want him to go on a long trip, you have to pay more. It's best to increase it to 180,000. In the end, the two bargained, and the entrusted amount was determined at 80,000. Wayne looked at Kerr with a puzzled look on his face. As far as I know, her family is very stingy. Who can she spend such an unjust money on? Why do you have to go to me? What do you mean? I don't understand. No, you understand, that's what I meant. Kerr's heart skipped a beat. Now that he was talking about it, he simply didn't hide it. He looked around and said, her family has an informant in the White Glove Association. Don't look, it's really not me. Last time the evil god came to Dragonheart Island after that, she asked me to help introduce her and applied for your detective agency. Then what? That's all I know. Kerr shrugged and asked, but Mona refused to say. According to the Holy See's style of doing things, it was very possible that Mona herself didn't know what she was looking for. Wayne raised his hand and touched his chin. Could it be that the Holy See was also looking for the Holy Sun or the Holy Night? Because he drove away the blood tyrant, the Holy See recognized him as one of its own? Wayne, when are you going to leave? I'll go home and get something, and we'll meet here in half an hour before we set off again. Wayne wanted to put the diary back in the bedroom, taking a pistol with him for self-defense. People in Windsor are afraid of gun violence. Okay, I'll go back to the detective agency. I happen to have a commission not far from Eclipse Town. After I find Mona, I'll go to Silent Hill. See you in half an hour. Don't be late this time. Kerr is not interested in the task of finding Mona. He is just a messenger, and he cannot let a small matter in the Holy See delay him from making a lot of money. What ridge? Wayne picked his ears and suspected that he had heard wrongly. Silent Hill. Oh, it turns out to be Dumbton. Wayne's eyelids twitched. The name sounded very evil, and he said kindly, I have been to Gyeonggi County, and the university life there is very good. I stayed there for a while, and I think I know the surrounding areas of Gyeonggi County very well. I've seen the place named Silent Hill on the map. It's a small place, so it's normal that it's not marked on the map. Okay, if you have any questions, call the detective agency and the assistant will notify me. Remember to give me half of the money then. Wayne, you are too sensitive. Not everything has problems. Maybe. It's hard to say for other places, but there must be something wrong with such an evil name as Silent Hill. He bet 50 cents that Kerr would be evil this time. Half an hour later, two cars drove out of London one after another. Kerr led the way, and Wayne strictly followed traffic rules and followed behind at a safe driving distance. When Wayne saw that Kerr was driving a car by himself instead of riding with him, he knew that this kid was always ready to get out of the way whenever he arrived. His attitude was so perfunctory and he didn't care at all. He was indeed not from the Holy See. Kerr has been in the detective industry for many years and is very familiar with the road conditions in London and the surrounding areas. The experienced driver does not use a map when driving and takes shortcuts throughout the journey. Wayne arrived at Eclipse Town before he could figure out the detour. The roads you are walking on are all broken and too narrow. Just tell me whether it's faster or not. Kerr looked at his watch. During tea time, he took Wayne for a walk around the town and accurately found the nearest bar. Eclipse Town is not a prosperous town. Like other rural towns, affected by industrialization, a large number of people have moved to the city, and it looks quite depressed. It is also a small town, but because of its remote location and lack of train access, it is much worse than the egg-rich town of Inload. With such an environment, the bar's business wasn't much better. When the two of them entered, the bartender was lying on the bar and dozing off. Kerr ordered a light meal and a beer. Seeing that Wayne only ordered 2 sandwiches, he nodded and praised, "That's right, you should drink less in the bar. Drinking too much will make you pregnant. I have seen many such people who don't know who the father of their children is when they wake up. Stop talking nonsense, eat quickly, and find someone after eating." Wayne was too lazy to pay attention to Kerr. He stuffed the sandwich into his stomach as quickly as possible. It was not elegant, but it was in line with the environment of the bar. "Wayne, I don't know if you have heard that people who don't drink waste half of their lives." Kerr raised his beer. "Come on, the drinks in Eclipse Town are very famous, and a beer festival is held every year. I also heard a saying that people who drink will waste the other half of their lives." Wayne refused the drink and asked Kerr to hurry up. If Mona was not acting, she might be procrastinating now. "You are still a gentleman, and you don't have any patience." Halfway through his words, Kerr heard the door open and subconsciously glanced at the door of the bar. His eyes suddenly shrank and his breathing stagnated. Wayne frowned and looked at the door. He saw that the person who came was a Windsor strongman weighing more than 200 pounds. He was speechless. This body shape is a military fan. No, it is Kerr's favorite. The female strongman was dressed gorgeously and held a lady's handbag. Although her style was somewhat nouveau-riche, she was definitely not a technician who lacked money to make a living. Wayne asked Kerr to save some energy, saying that it was a waste of time to chat up. He should accompany him to find Mona first, and then he could do whatever he wanted. "No, I'll be quick." Kerr raised his beer and asked the bartender to bring another bottle. He said complacently, "Wayne, chatting up is not a waste of time. Believe me, you are just too shy. You just need to walk up to the other person, extend your hand, and ask if she has a boyfriend. You will definitely get a reply that she has no boyfriend. I have never failed with this trick. You have wasted your face. Remember to keep it up." Wayne didn't know where to start complaining, and said speechlessly, "Since I met you, my world has been full of pornography. Don't you think your behavior is very shameful? A healthy soul lives in a healthy body, it's not shameful." "No, you are not healthy at all." When the bartender brought the beer, Kerr handed over a banknote and inquired about some information about the strongman. The result was not very good. She did not have a boyfriend, but she was a married woman, and her husband was the mayor. Kerr sighed and gave up the idea of chatting up. He complained to Wayne aggrievedly, "Love comes fast and goes faster. I thought I was in love, but I never expected that I was late. The woman I liked was in someone else's arms, and the relationship ended before it even started. Change your perspective. Do you feel more comfortable when you like a woman in someone else's arms?" Wayne grabbed Kerr and walked out of the bar. "You can't always bring the victim into your life. Change your perspective and bring CAOZE into your life. It will be much more comfortable. If you think CAOZE doesn't sound good, then change the way you say it, the posture of a hero." Kerr felt that Wayne's words were unreasonable because he was really heartbroken. The two came to the bar where Mona was staying, handed over a bill, and asked about Mona's whereabouts. "Sorry, I can't tell you the whereabouts of the guest, even if you call yourself her friend." The boss shook his head, very principled. "If you are so principled, why did you take the money just now?" Kerr took out another bill and handed it over. "Please hurry up, human lives are important, we are in a hurry." The boss didn't say anything until the third bill was received, which awakened his dormant memory and took the initiative to reveal the information. "The lady seems to be investigating something, she was targeted by the police in the town. As far as I know, the police in the town are all under the command of Mayor Wells." Wayne looked at Kerr. "So, the mayor also has a script?" Kerr frowned. The script was a little complicated, and it was very different from what he imagined. It was not like the style of the church, let's go to the police station to ask. Mona might really be in trouble. For the two silver mages, the small town police station was no different from a bus. They could go in and out as they pleased. With a polarizing magic, they could save the money for the bus ticket. In the sheriff's office, Wayne stuffed a mushroom into the sheriff's mouth. The other side answered all the questions and confessed everything. Silent Hill dug up a gold mine. In order to take the wealth for himself, the mayor secretly manipulated many means. Mona, who passed by, meddled in other people's business and was chased by the mayor's thugs. She drove all the way to Silent Hill. What kind of thugs are so powerful that they can chase the silver mages? X2. Wayne and Kerr looked at each other, the latter nodded and complained, "What did I say? I should have approached her just now. If you hadn't kept urging me, I would have done it 10 times. 10 times, what kind of information can't I get?" Wayne rolled his eyes. He was not so boastful. He would have been tired after 10 times. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 144. The two returned to the bar and happened to meet the mayor's wife coming out of the bar. Kerr stepped forward to strike up a conversation with an easy-to-understand bar joke, which instantly made the mayor's wife laugh from ear to ear. His face was charming and charming. The mayor's wife sincerely invited him to her home and said that her husband was not at home. Kerr was overjoyed. "Elegant lady, to be honest, I was attracted by your charm when I first saw you." Ahem. Wayne clenched his fists and coughed twice. "Stop chatting and get down to business." Kerr curled his lips and secretly brought a bird Enman over. At the invitation of the mayor's wife, he was honored to visit the mayor's mansion. In the living room, Wayne pushed Kerr away, stuffed the mayor's wife with a mushroom, and asked about the ins and outs of the gold mine. The matter of the gold mine is very complicated, but to make a long story short, it is simple. There is a copper mine in Silent Hill that has been abandoned for many years. Some time ago, news came out that a gold mine had been dug. Relying on his power, the mayor suppressed the news and wanted to purchase the land where the copper mine was located at a low price. Mona was purely acting out of a sense of justice and was not used to these bullying local operations. She was discovered by the mayor's thugs while secretly collecting evidence. The thugs took the police officers with them, but Mona did not fight back and drove to Silent Hill. Wells and Dunn went to Silent Hill together. Dunn said that the woman had a great background, and if she didn't want the gold mine to be robbed, she must be killed and silenced. The mayor's wife swallowed the mushroom, her expression was confused, and she turned into a ruthless answering machine. "Dunn is very capable. He is Wells' distant cousin. Wells became the mayor only because of Dunn's help, so he has special respect for him. I don't know who Dunn is. He likes to be alone and hardly communicates with anyone else except Wells. A magician, maybe, he can do some incredible things. The gold mine is in the Elemental Mountain." "Wait a minute." Wayne raised his hand to stop. "What element? Please explain clearly." "Elements of the periodic table of elements," the mayor's wife replied blankly. Wayne was silent. It was his fault, he was a little too excited. He came to the living room, looked at the map on the wall, and memorized the terrain distribution of Eclipse Town, Silent Hill, and Elemental Mountain. Silent Hill and Elemental Mountain were not marked on the big map. The mayor's map was meticulous to every corner, with villages, rivers, and transportation routes very clear. On the other side, Kerr began to inquire. He was very interested in Dunn and asked where he lived. "Dunn has no residence in the town. He comes once a month and lives in the top floor compartment. Every time he comes, Wells will give him a lot of money." 5 minutes later, Kerr had no problem. Generally speaking, he was very reliable in doing things. Not only did he ask about the mayor's illegal activities, he also asked about the location of the ledger. Wayne and Kerr split into two groups. one going to the cubicle and the other to the study. The former found nothing on the top floor, while the latter found a large amount of criminal evidence. The reason why the mayor kept the evidence at home was not because he was too stupid and believed that he would not be caught. On the contrary, he kept the evidence so that it would come in handy if he was arrested. In recent years, the mayor has not done anything that people can do, but has used other tricks to make a profit. In addition to enjoying himself, most of the money he made was given to Dunn and used to smoothen relationships. Whose relationship was cleared, who took bribes from so and how much each time, it's all clear in the account book. This is the lifeblood of the mayor. As long as the account book is in his hands, he will not die. It's enough for this guy to die 10 times. Kerr flipped through the ledger and handed it to Wayne. The latter glanced at it briefly, and his face gradually became expressionless. In addition to a series of immoral activities such as corruption and bribery, the mayor also had a lot of lives on his hands. He managed the relationship and replaced the small town police station with his own people. Through these minions, he used his minions to eradicate evildoers, rob the poor and give to the rich, and completely the town became a private domain where people could do whatever they wanted. Don't blame Mona for being nosy, Wayne couldn't help but want to take a look at it. I've been to Eclipse Town before, but I never paid attention to this guy. Kerr frowned slightly, looking at the evidence of the crimes he committed, which have not been exposed yet. It is by no means as simple as establishing a relationship. Dunn must be a magician. The magician supports the mayor to rise to power, helps him conceal his crimes, and asks for rewards. If you are brave, the magician is the mastermind, and the mayor is just his puppet, Wayne speculated. It is indeed possible, but ordinary magicians will not do this. If it is not an evil belief, it can only be a black magician. Kerr was slightly unhappy. This guy is very good at hiding. He has not been exposed for so long. Discover. The two took the evidence and left the mayor's mansion. Wayne picked a crooked tree, wrapped the evidence and buried it in the ground. Silent Hill is not far from here, 15 kilometers away. How about walking there? Kerr suggested. The target for vehicles is too big. There are people from the mayor over there. There is a risk of being blasted. Walk more safely. No need to go to such trouble. We are strangers and we are strangers. There is no difference between driving and walking. Wayne shook his head. There was nothing to hide, and there was no way to hide it anyway. Get your car. Silent Hill. Two figures were walking on foot in the night. Kerr is unwilling to give up his car. In his words, the car is a man's lover, and his family status is infinitely close to his wife's. He is not married, and the car is his wife. There is no reason to use his wife to blow it up. Wayne didn't want to either and just blew up one some time ago. Silent Hill is a mining area on the edge of Eclipse Town. It was once very prosperous because of the copper mines, and a large number of miners settled here. At its peak, the total population exceeded 30,000. It doesn't work anymore, miners have left in large numbers, and few people except local residents visit. Perhaps it was a psychological effect, but Silent Hill was similar to the scenery in Wayne's fantasy, with deep mountains and old forests, no birds, dim stars in the night sky, and everything around him was blurry, as if shrouded in a thick layer of darkness. The two walked along the road, and before approaching the village, they spotted a car at a three-way intersection. The car was rubbed in many places, the windows were smashed, it was a mess inside, and even 4 tires were punctured. Wayne stretched out his hand to grab a handful of wind in the car and sniffed it. The perfume was very familiar. It was definitely Mona's scent. However, this was the smell inside the car. As a silver mage, Mona perfectly concealed her scent. If she left the car, Wayne would be unable to track her exact location. It's time to choose one of the three again. Kerr looked at the fork in the road, his detective soul blazing, and said to Wayne, Separating at this time is definitely asking for trouble. Choose a path. Where do you think Mona will go? Wayne shrugged his nose and smelled nothing. One day had passed and the smell in the air had long since faded. It was unrealistic to expect to track the mayor's scent to find Mona. Moreover, if you really find Mona by tracking the mayor, the latter is most likely to be full of righteousness. I don't think it's necessary to go find Mona. A black magician, 7 or 8 guns, and a few police dogs can't catch her. Instead of wasting time looking for her, it's better to go to the mayor. Wayne looked at the distant village, sees the black magician and the mayor. Mona received the news and came out without having to look for herself. Kerr's blazing detective soul suddenly went silent, and he secretly said boringly, "If you go straight to the topic like this, you will miss a lot of surprises. Life is like a journey, and the scenery along the way. Stop talking nonsense. Just because you have many words doesn't make sense. Find the mayor and the black magician." Wayne directly interrupted the chanting, "Speaking of which, you came to Silent Hill for a commission. What are you investigating?" "A commission from the White Glove Association. At night, there will be flashes of light near Elemental Mountain. Let me come over and write an investigation report." Kerr didn't hide it. He had seen too many similar commissions, and they were basically all trips at public expense. Flash. Is there a possibility that this is a sign of the emergence of heavenly materials and earthly treasures? Wayne stopped feeling sleepy immediately and said cheerfully, "After we find Mona, I will write a report. You go and comfort the mayor's wife. Her husband must be very sad when he goes to jail. Can you be so kind? Well, I'll share half of the commission fee." The Silent Hill mine is divided into 2 areas, the inner and outer areas. The outer area is occupied by local residents who moved here when the copper mine was discovered, and the inner area is home to miners and other staff. After the copper mine was abandoned, the inner area was basically uninhabited, a large number of stores were closed, and it was so dark that there were no street lights. Because it is an area planned and built as a whole, the roads are horizontal and vertical. During the day, you can see the entrance to the mining area from the street. Wayne came to the inner area and soon smelled some chaotic human odors, such as tobacco, alcohol, and body odor from not taking a shower for many days. There were 7 or 8 cars parked in front of a dormitory in front of the mine. 2 bearded men in police uniforms were having a drink. A cordon was drawn around the area to prevent anyone from entering the mine. A breeze filled with the fragrance of flowers wafted over, and the 2 of them smelled of alcohol and soon fell to the ground and fell asleep. The faith magic of the Church of Nature may not be as lethal as the Church of the Sun, but its field control effect is top-notch, especially when dealing with ordinary people. It basically happens every second. Wayne begged the seeds from Veronica, opened a small vegetable garden in his backyard, and cultivated a lot of spores. He preferred these sleeping spores to hallucinogenic and parasitic spores. Sleeping in an invisible space. On the other side, Kerr checked the nearby dormitory and shook his head, finding nothing. Wayne first deflated all the tires, and then grabbed one of the police officers. He had a beard, a fleshy face, and his police uniform was tightly stretched. He looked like a fake. He grabbed his collar and slapped him awake. After feeding him the mushrooms, he slapped him again with his backhand. "Tell me, where is your boss Wells? The mayor went into the mine this morning and hasn't come out yet. What is he doing in the mines?" Wayne glanced at the entrance of the mine in confusion. The light was dim and there were 2 rows of mine carts parked in front of the door. "I don't know. The mayor took everyone there. The 2 of us are responsible for guarding. No mice can be allowed in." "Well, you did a good job in completing the task." There was indeed no mouse sneaking in. Wayne loosened his collar and repeated his same trick of questioning another imposter, and got basically the same information. He looked at Kerr, who nodded. "You're here, go in and have a look, Just treat it as a mission investigation. No rush, let's change our equipment first. When the camera turned, Wayne changed into work clothes, wearing a safety helmet, holding a flashlight, a towel hanging around his neck, a pistol on his back, and a compressed biscuit stuffed in his pocket. "Don't you think you're a bit exaggerated?" Kerr said weakly. He has a good overall perception of Wayne and has no negative comments. The only thing he is cautious about is that Wayne can always refresh his understanding. "Are compressed biscuits serious? Even if there is a landslide, you can still grow your own mushrooms." Wayne didn't say anything. "The boat won't straighten itself when it reaches the bridge. Only by being careful can you sail for a long time. It won't be wrong to be cautious." The two walked into the mine. The mine was paved with tracks. The entrance was very spacious. Electric wires were pulled along the way. There was a mining lamp every 10 meters. Wayne seemed to think of something, stopped and said, "You don't smoke, right?" "It hurts my waist, I've quit." "That's good, I'm just afraid that you'll light a cigarette to calm down and drag me in." "How could there be a fool smoking here?" "That's too stupid, and we are magicians, and the fire can't hurt us." Kerr was a little tired, took out his pocket, and threw a box of matches out of the mine. Boom! The moment the match fell to the ground, there was a loud noise from inside the mine. The mining lamps above the two people's heads flickered, illuminating the two faces. "You're right, someone really smoked in the mine." Kerr widened his eyes. Wayne also widened his eyes, pointed inside the mine, and then pointed outside the cave. X2. 3 seconds later, the two left the mine. The explosion just now was very likely to cause the mine to collapse. It was just a black magician. What's the point of playing with life? A moment later, hurried footsteps came from the depths of the mine, and a curse sounded. "Put up the gun and guard the cave entrance. The other exits have been blocked. If that woman doesn't want to starve to death in there, she will definitely break out from here." The footsteps were getting closer and closer. Wayne leaned against the wall outside the cave and counted silently in his heart, "Fall. Fall. Fall." After a series of muffled sounds, there was no sound in the cave. "Kerr, go check and see if anyone is pretending to sleep." "Why should I go in? What if it collapses?" Kerr muttered to himself, and went 5 meters deep into the mine. After checking and confirming that everything was correct, he buried all the guns on the spot and said disappointedly, "There is no mayor and no black magician done. These are just ordinary people." Looking back at Wayne, "What should we do now? Should we go in? From what they said, Mona is starving to death." Kerr's face was full of rejection. He didn't want to go into the mine. Wayne had the same idea, no need. Mona knows holy light magic. She won't starve to death in 3 to 5 days. It's okay to starve for a while. Just think of it as losing weight. Kerr agreed with both hands. The two dragged a dozen thugs out of the mine and threw them in the corner like a pyramid. Continue the ambush. 5 minutes later, two footsteps were getting closer and closer to the exit of the mine. When they were about to enter the spore ambush circle, their footsteps suddenly stopped. "Leo, I asked you to guard the cave entrance, why is there no one here?" No one answered. The younger brothers were sleeping soundly, and the atmosphere was a little awkward. Wayne kindly took action and took the initiative to break the awkward situation. He raised his 5 fingers and rolled the spores into the mine. At the same time, he took out the pistol behind him and fired several shots at the two hazy figures with the help of the dim light. Bang bang bang. Dunn had been on guard for a long time. He waved his hand to roll up the wind and block the fragrance that came to his face. The bullets that hit his body bounced off as if they hit steel. Natural magic. Dunn's face was ugly. A magician from the Holy See, plus the believers of the Natural Church, the situation became more and more difficult. When will the bishop arrive? If he doesn't come, the stone slab can't be defended. Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 145. The bullets clanged and shot at Dun, only breaking his clothes, and bounced off like steel. Carrot dash dot. Dot dash dot. Dot carrot dash. He roared, his body swelled, his height rose to 2 meters and 5, his muscles supported the suit into a tight suit, one arm raised to his chest, and rushed towards the exit of the mine like a cannonball. What kind of magic is this? Can it block bullets? Metal shell? Wayne looked at the tear in the suit, and with the help of the dim mining lamp, he vaguely saw the luster reflected by the white metal. He didn't have time to be surprised, and slid to block the exit of the mine. With a slight hook of his fingers, several vines shot out from the ground. The vines wrapped around Dun's feet like poisonous snakes. Although they were torn apart by the brutal force, the resistance still affected his balance. Dun leaned forward, and his momentum involuntarily decreased. He stumbled several times and almost fell to the ground. Wayne raised his fingers together, and a vine snake as thick as his arm emerged, wrapped around one of Dun's ankles, and swung it around and slammed it to the ground. The wind whistled in front of Dun's eyes, and there were several loud bangs. The lights in the mine flickered, the rock walls trembled, and the debris of earth and rocks fell. Bang! 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 Wayne had no intention of fighting with it in close combat. Based on the principle of using it to death, he controlled the vines to smash it continuously, leaving a concave human-shaped pit on the ground every time it fell. The mine was not only filled with compacted land, but also with wooden sleepers and railroad tracks. Dun roared and blocked his hands in front of him. He could protect the front but not the back, and the back of his head had a close contact with the railroad tracks. Bang! The sound was crisp and pleasant, and the lingering sound was clearly audible. Hey, don't kill him, leave him alive to interrogate him for information. Kerr reminded him that Dun treated Eclipse Town as a bank and withdrew a large amount of cash through Mayor Wells every month. It was organized and premeditated, and there was obviously a professional gang behind it. Holy light magic is good at healing, but it cannot bring the dead back to life. According to Wayne's method of smashing, after a set of procedures, the brains were thrown out, and he could not be saved. The clues were broken, and it would be difficult to follow the clues. It's just a serious injury, but it's not that easy to die. Wayne said this, but his men still left some room. The vines loosened and smashed Dun against the wall. Not far away, the fat and greasy fat man, that is, Mayor Wells, was trembling with his teeth and pretending to be calm with a pistol. Don't come over, I have a gun. Wayne didn't even look at it, and waved his hand to roll up the spores and blew them over. The mayor was very straightforward, and he fell down as soon as Wayne raised his hand. Sir, although the times have changed, a pistol cannot scare a magician. Remember to use a submachine gun next time. No, use a heavy machine gun. Someone said that a heavy machine gun is better than a submachine gun. Dun staggered to his feet, dizzy and light-footed, and everything seemed to be spinning. His skin was thick and his vitality was different from that of an ordinary person. Even for a magician, it was too outrageous. Wayne narrowed his eyes and caught the white metal light of the tear in his suit again. It was not metal at all, but bone. Dun pulled out the bones in his body and covered them on his body surface. True exoskeleton defense. Dun held the wall with one hand and raised the other arm high, staring at Wayne fiercely. Pagan, return to the arms of death. His bones were thick, and his raised arm was much thicker than an ordinary person's thigh. On his arm, there were densely painted black tadpole symbols. As the magic power was injected, the tadpole symbol moved along the skin of the arm and turned into a black crow with its wings spread. The goddess of death has 3 subordinate gods. Because the goddess is high above and does not descend to the mortal world, except for the chosen knights, even the most outstanding disciples find it difficult to listen to her oracle. If you want to contact death, you can only go through the three subordinate gods. Therefore, these three subordinate gods are also called the three major agents. They are the observer, the judge, and the executor. The observer, the doom spider Griu, had previously invited Wayne to join the death camp. The black crow on Dun's arm symbolizes the judge among the three major agents, the soul-eating crow Sane. The black crow symbol lit up, the gray death swamp swept down, and the dead and cold withering wind blew, instantly killing the spores floating in the air, and the vines withered and rotted the moment they came into contact. Dun roared, and the breath of death wrapped around his body rushed out of the mine. The bones that had grown and hardened due to magic power drilled out of the skin. The 3-meter-tall white hedgehog shone with metallic luster and was bloody. Wayne felt sick. He thought a lot, but he didn't expect that the black magician who didn't behave like a human was a believer of the goddess of death. In fact, he was right. He thought that death was peaceful and eternal, but it didn't mean that death was only peaceful and eternal. In most cases, death was synonymous with evil. It was reasonable for the necromancer to manipulate the mayor to plunder the people's blood and use the stolen money to subsidize the Church of Death. As a death knight, Wayne felt ashamed and stared at Dun, who rushed towards him. Return to the arms of death. Wayne pushed his hands away, and the earth rumbled and shook. Countless vines rose from the ground, hundreds of spikes protruded, and piled up into high walls, rolling over like a chariot. Boom! The gray death swamp collided with the vibrant vines, and water and fire could not coexist. The two opposite energies were crushed back and forth, and the killing was inextricable. Kerr reminded him, he has summoned the power of the agent Sane. If you keep wasting your mana, you have no chance of winning. Don't waste your mana. Make some space. We will attack together. There is no need to talk about chivalry in dealing with evil spirits, let's go together. No, I can handle it by myself. Green light bloomed in Wayne's eyes, and under Kerr's incredible gaze, he used his huge magic power to block the divine power summoned by Dun. Regardless of the quality or quantity of magic power, it far exceeds the limit that a silver mage can achieve, and can also achieve a crushing effect on ordinary gold mages. If Dun hadn't been possessed by the agent's divine power, he would have been pushed down by Yibaliu. This monster! Kerr was dumbfounded and seriously suspected that the Holy See sent Mona to approach Wayne in order to poach the natural church. If you can't dig it out, take a hostage back, it won't be a loss. Boom! An unknown murmur sounded, low, terrifying, and full of extreme ominousness. The aura of death surged in an instant, and a high wall of decaying vines rushed directly in front of Wayne. The rich aura of death wrapped tightly around Wayne, and then nothing else. The effect is very average. From the perspective of Kerr, a bystander, the breath of death could not harm Wayne. The latter was green from head to toe. No matter how hard the breath of death struck, it could not break through the light film. Happy Death Day, heathen! Roars mixed with anger and pain came out of the mine and resounded through the night sky. Dun's body actually swelled once again. White bone and steel spikes came out one after another. Blood mist bloomed, tearing the skin and muscles. The bloody monster with strong visual impact occupied the entire mine tunnel. Terrifying air waves surrounded the whole body, and with a heart-rending cry, white bone steel thorns gathered together, growing tightly together in one place, like a huge knight's gun, rushing out of the mine entrance with infinite force. The air of death gathered, disrupted the airflow, wrapped around the tip of the knight's spear, and turned into a violent hurricane that spiraled forward. Kerr yelled, and in a hurry, he only had time to cast a spell and erect a solid white wall in front of Wayne. The wall of holy light was touched by the spiraling breath of death and fell apart in the blink of an eye. Wayne did not dodge, he stepped down with his feet spread apart, and the fist tucked under his abdomen turned into an afterimage and shot out. Fight head on. The moment he punched, the work clothes on Wayne's arm tore, the punch thrust forward, the air compressed and dented, and there was an explosion like a whip. The violent force surged forward, hitting the tip of the gray spiral gun. The two collided, and the explosive force caused Wayne's feet to sink, and the ground sunken and cracked with crackling cracks. The fist touched the aura of death, and the spiral momentum stopped abruptly. It disappeared in an instant, and then the remaining force not only hit the Bone Knight's gun, but the terrifying force was enough to create a deep fist mark even with steel. Boom! The ground shook, and Kerr's eardrums boomed, as if he was temporarily deaf. He could not hear anything, but the noise made his head buzz. The sound shook him back repeatedly, and strong winds poured into the mine, shaking off a large amount of gravel and soil. The momentum of the knight's gun stalled, and large cracks appeared on its surface. As the violent wind rolled across the border, the cracks spread from the tip of the gun. Pieces of white bones fell off, and the Bone Knight's gun shattered and splashed in all directions. With his bones broken, his divine power exhausted, and covered in blood and bones, Dunn stood there stupidly, muttering it's impossible. Death collapsed in the face of nature, which shocked his faith and made him unable to accept it for a while. It doesn't matter if it's just his death magic. If you can't defeat it, you can't defeat it, but this is the divine power of the agent. Just practice more and more, there are so many things that are impossible. With an expressionless expression, Wayne retracted his fist and rubbed it repeatedly behind his back. If he pushed it too hard, the breath of death might not hurt him, and he might even feel as happy as going home, but his bones were really hard. Kerr recovered from the shock and looked behind Wayne. Oh, you rubbed it, it hurts, you hurt. Where did this nonsense come from? Wayne was too lazy to pay attention to him, and waved his hand to roll up the vines and wrap them around Dunn. The latter was covered in blood and could no longer fight. He looked at the rolling green vines with an evil smile on his lips. His face was covered in blood, and his smile was particularly ferocious. Boom! The flesh and blood exploded, and the minced flesh mixed with the aura of death was smeared everywhere. In the rich death, the malice called the curse lingered. Pieces of white bones emerged from the flesh and blood, and under the guidance of the aura of death, they gathered into a 3-meter-tall white bone giant. The white skeleton peels off flesh and blood, and is filled with an ominous aura. It holds a white bone sword in one hand and a white bone shield in the other. 2 dots of white light are beating on the skull, and a gray mist of death is wrapped behind it. It looks like it is brave and good at fighting. It's the curse of death. He cursed himself to be tireless, painless, and never fall down. Kerr frowned and said, "It's better for me to do it. This is more difficult. My holy light can effectively suppress it." As he spoke, Wayne had already walked up to the skeleton infantry and punched out, dispelling the breath of death. The bones were scattered all over the place. The white skull fell to the ground and rolled several times. The light spots in the eye sockets struggled and jumped for a few times before going out. "What are you talking about? What can the holy light suppress?" Wayne turned around and asked. "Kerr. I was careless and misread the magic formula. It was not a stalking curse to scare people. Damn the death believers, they still have to deal with him before they die." Wayne put his fist on his lower back and rubbed it repeatedly, and said, "Kerr, don't stand there in a daze. Come and see, can this guy be saved?" "Can." Kerr snorted twice, "As long as I am one of the 7 angels in charge of the Golden Rule, as long as his soul returns to heaven, he can be saved if these 2 conditions are met. So that's it, I learned a useless new posture." Kerr dragged Mayor Wells out of the mine, woke him up with a left hook, and before the other party could speak, he slapped him several times in a row. "I didn't expect you to hate evil so much." Wayne was surprised. He thought he was the only one like this. Who made him marry such a beautiful wife? Wayne was speechless and politely exited the dialogue sequence. He picked up the mayor's pistol and put it on his waist, looking into the depths of the mine. As I said, it is impossible to go in. If the mine collapses, who will enforce justice in the future? Mona, come out quickly if you hear it. Wayne shouted, pricked up his ears and waited for a response. The complexity of the mine was far beyond imagination, and it was definitely not as simple as a straight road. Wayne pressed one hand on the ground, and a vine emerged from his feet. As he injected magic power, a small white flower as pure as him bloomed at the tip of the vine. Vision sharing, perception expansion. The vine wandered along the ground, deep into the mine with complex terrain. When it encountered a fork along the way, the vine grew new branches, and a white flower grew on top of each branch. The rustling crawling sound spread throughout the mine, looking for Mona's hiding place. Kerr shuddered when he heard it, and whispered, I wanted to say it a long time ago, the magic of the Church of Nature is too weird. 10 minutes later, Wayne saw a familiar butt in an almost collapsed tunnel with the help of sensory vision. No, it was a familiar figure. The plump back, like a peach, using the adjective of nature believers, Wayne would like to call it a succulent plant, with plenty of water. Mona was wearing the uniform of the tactical team, lying limply on the mound. Her white robe was spotless, her black silk stockings were broken in many places, she was not wearing shoes, and she looked like she was in a coma, a scene of post-war settlement. Wake up, don't sleep. The vines climbed to Mona's shoulders, and Wayne couldn't wake her up by shouting, so he had to whip her face again and again. Mona frowned, too tired, her eyelids trembled a few times and she didn't wake up. Wayne had no choice but to control other vines to gather together, weave into a net to cover Mona, and return to the original path to drag her towards the exit of the mine. With this drag, the white robe slid up and retreated directly to the waist. Vine poking out. JPG. Wayne thought it was boring, drove away this uncontrolled vine, and controlled the vines to cover the robe tightly. What's so good about it? It's not like he hasn't seen it before. Wayne lifted Mona's body and placed it on the fishing net woven by vines to prevent her from being disfigured. He thoughtfully arranged a frontal placement. Along the way, the stockings rubbed against the ground and were damaged, and another scene was settled. 3 minutes later, the vine net brought Mona back to the entrance of the mine. Wayne raised his hand and snapped his fingers, asking Kerr to come and rescue her. He didn't know anything about holy light magic, and his profession was not suitable. Kerr half crouched in front of Mona, put one hand on her forehead, and injected holy light to dispel her pain. The result was not very good. Her injury is not serious, and she has healed herself. She didn't wake up because her thinking was too exhausted. It's understandable. The enemy is really capable. Kerr shook his head and could only wait for Mona to wake up. Carry him on your back, let's leave here first. Wayne pointed at the mayor and said to Kerr. Instead of carrying him, I might as well carry Mona. At least she is a woman. Kerr looked disgusted and chose a woman between ugly and ugly. He is your rival in love. If you don't carry him, who else can you carry? Wayne was quick and carried Mona on his shoulders before Kerr. He walked out of the mine and subconsciously patted his butt. The mayor can die, but he can't die here. There are a bunch of accomplices waiting for him to identify in court. This is the back of justice. Many people want to carry it but can't find a way. What do you have to dislike? It's easy to say, but you don't see how heavy he is. Kerr refused to get close to Mayor Wells. He dragged him out of the mine by the wrist. The two entered the miners' dormitory and Kerr threw him to the ground. Wayne looked around. There was a dirty floor and an iron bed without bedding. He chose one of the two and put Mona on the bed. If she dared to sleep on the floor today, she would dare to sleep on the boss tomorrow. Let's go straight to bed. The person has been found, the mission is completed, and the next step is my commission investigation. Kerr looked at Wayne and raised his eyebrows and said, I remember you said that you would write the investigation report and I would give you half of the commission money. You took it seriously just because I said it casually. How can a man not keep his word? Kerr was furious. How fresh. A real man can't help but keep his word sometimes. Wayne flicked his middle finger. The mine was at risk of collapse at any time. If he went in, he would be a hammer. Just then, Mona woke up with a cry, propped up her arms and shook her dizzy head. Quick, there is a stone slab deep in the mine, go get it quickly. She had a severe headache. She didn't know if it was an illusion. Just now, she felt someone touching her butt while she was half asleep and half awake. It was a very familiar feeling. It was the master, but it was Bruce's method. Mona looked at the two men in the field suspiciously. Who touched it just now? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 146. What's a slate? Kerr asked aloud. The detective had a keen sense of smell and suspected that it was related to his investigative mission. I don't know what that stone slab is, I just know. Mona leaned against the iron pillar of the bed frame, frowning and talking about her investigation. She originally planned to transfer Wayne out of Lundam City through the Commission of Finding Pets, and use the arrangements of the Holy See to thoroughly investigate the mission target. The location has been chosen, and it's in Eclipse Town. If nothing else happens, it's a sure bet. As expected, she came out unexpectedly. Because of her investigation, she accidentally discovered dirty information about Mayor Wells, which caused a major incident. Mona didn't take the mayor and his accomplices seriously at first. Small problems did not affect her in-depth investigation of Wayne. Unexpectedly, this small problem almost forced her into a desperate situation. According to my search at the mayor's house, the so-called gold mine is not true. There is no gold mine at all. The mayor purchased the mine land to find a slate. Mona slowly said that the mayor and the necromancer were working together to provide funds for the Death Church and be protected by it. It was Dunn and the Death Church behind him who were looking for the stone slab. The mayor blocked the mining area for a long time and secretly ordered people to dig. The news spread and rumors of the gold mine formed. The mayor doesn't know much. I didn't find any extra clues at his house, but the Death Church has invested a lot of effort in him. It's possible that he came here for the slate from the beginning. I'm worried that the slate will be taken away by them if it's too late. So I ventured into the mining area. As she spoke, Mona felt much better. She no longer had headaches and brain swelling, and her thoughts became much clearer. She felt that she might have thought too much. No one touched her butt just now. She was thinking about her every day and dreaming about her at night. She must have been missing her master while she was asleep. But just in case. You two, who carried me here just now? Kerr decisively sold Wayne. You know me, an ugly girl like you makes me feel sick even if I touch you. X2. Mona's eyelids twitched, but instead of correcting Kerr's erroneous aesthetic sense, Mona looked at Wayne intently. There are differences in size, but for a magician, these are not a problem. Thinking of this, Mona's heart skipped a beat, and her eyes sharpened for a moment. If she remembered correctly, she had peeked at Wayne's butt before, and the curves were somewhat similar. So, Wayne is Bruce? What's wrong? Is there any problem? Wayne scratched his face. If it's to say thank you, there's no need. Let's be realistic. I fished you out of the mine and saved your life. You can calculate how much you are worth and just transfer the money directly. Having said that, I still want to say thank you. Mona smiled slightly. She couldn't tell whether it was true or false. She had to find an opportunity to get started. At this time, Mona has forgotten the task of investigating Wayne. It is not important. It is more important to confirm who Bruce is. That money. The money matter is not urgent for the time being, the top priority is to find the slate. Mona looked at Wayne. Perhaps it was a psychological effect. The more suspicious she became, the more similar she felt. Not afraid of all sacrifices, not afraid of the devil's ideological enslavement. How similar? If Wayne is indeed the person she is looking for, all the characteristics happen to correspond to Bruce. In other words, the two people she is looking for are actually the same person. Mona took a deep breath. It was all her reserve that had caused her harm. If she had known this, she would have sneaked up and pinched her from behind that day. On the other side, Kerr and Wayne glared at each other. They were very realistic and wanted each other to accompany Mona on a trip because the risk of mind collapse was too great. However, out of their own interests, they did not want Mona, who represented the Holy See, to get the tablet. It's so confusing. After pondering for a moment, Kerr analyzed the stakes and decisively withdrew from the competition. He joined the Free Mage Alliance to make money, and he really liked the challenging job of detective. There was no need to risk his life for a slate of unknown purpose. Wayne is even more entangled, the elemental mountain, the stone slab, the birth of the treasure, no matter how you look at it, it is the rhythm of opportunity before you. He felt a loss if he didn't pick up things along the way. If he quit at this time, he would wake up crying even if he fell asleep. But what if the mind collapses? Prudence is a matter of principle, which involves zero or countless times. Once the precedent is set, it cannot be stopped in the future. Mona stood up unsteadily and took out the mind map from her arms. There is no time to hesitate. The necromancer has notified his accomplices. The other party may rush over at any time. Find out if there is a phone nearby. I notify the cathedral. By the time you notify the cathedral and the people over there arrive, we will have been turned into skeleton soldiers by the death mage. Wayne gritted his teeth and stamped his feet. Let's go to the mine now and find the slate before the death church arrives. Don't say anything to let these evil-doing guys get the treasure. Mona nodded repeatedly. Yes, that's it. I'm not going. Kerr shook his head repeatedly. It was not his turn to find the stone slab, and he was unwilling to risk going deep into the mine. Then please go to the other exits of the mine and open a passage. If the entrance of the mine is blocked by people from the death church, Wayne and I can leave from other places. Mona did not force it. Kerr nodded in agreement, and then added, the ugly words are ahead. If the death church's large group of people really comes, I can't be their opponent. Don't expect me to delay time. Deploy a few traps and you'll do your best. That's no problem. The night is getting darker, black clouds obscure the remaining stars, and Silent Hill is eerily quiet. Wayne changed into work clothes and followed Mona into the mine, laying out several trigger traps along the way to guard against the large number of people from the death church. Mona has an excellent sense of direction and follows the directions on the map to lead Wayne through the dark tunnels. She tried several times to slow down her pace and wait for Wayne to come forward, but failed. If she took a step slower, Wayne would take a step slower. If she took a step faster, Wayne would take a step faster, firmly protecting her in front of him. This is also very similar to the Master. After finishing the journey of laying wires, it was pitch black ahead. Mona took a short rest and recovered part of her thinking. She was unable to engage in high-intensity battles, but the lighting was still no problem. The light was intermittent, leaving Wayne speechless for a moment. He took out the flashlight from his waist and handed it to him. Save your magic power as much as you can, and be more flexible in your thinking. Don't always look at problems like a magician. Mona took the flashlight, feeling like she was being scolded by Bruce again for psychological reasons. Happy. She hurriedly shook her head to dispel the strange thoughts. It was too casual to be happy now, and she was not a pervert. Once the confirmation is complete, Wayne is Bruce, and there is plenty of opportunity to be happy. The road ahead collapsed in many places. Mona had fought several times with Dunn, who was chasing her. Her mind was severely damaged, and Dunn had exhausted his magic power, so she directly summoned divine power when facing Wayne. Of course, it was not the power of the goddess of death, otherwise his body would not be able to bear it. I didn't have time to explore the next area, so I blew up a tunnel to scare the enemies away, Mona said. Wayne's eyes twitched, and he lamented that Mona was very brave and had such a big heart for a long time. If it were him, he would not dare to do it. If it collapsed, they would both perish. Well, it's hard to say, maybe at that time they really had the intention of dying together. I'll come find you. Wayne pressed one hand on the ground, planted a seed, controlled the vines to burst out of the ground, and explored the way forward in the same way as to find Mona. The tight overalls trousers immediately attracted Mona to take a peek. After a visual inspection, they seemed to be a little smaller than Bruce's butt. If the body shape also shrinks, local shrinkage is natural. Mona secretly thought that she had a headache. According to this assumption, even if she touched London's more than 3 million butts one by one, she would not be able to find the owner. It's very difficult. Wayne searched around, and the vines spread to the surrounding mines. They either made detours or hit walls, and barely cleared a blind spot. Let's go to another location. Outside the mine, it was nearly an hour since Wayne and Mona went deep into the mine. Kerr followed the directions on the map and found the remaining exits of the mine that had been blown up by Wells and others. The collapse was severe. He barely cleared 2 passages and was too tired to move. It consumes physical strength and magic power. If he had known this, he would not come to Silent Hill. Suddenly, Kerr noticed the sound of the trap being triggered. He restrained his breath and looked at the entrance of the mine in the distance. It came so soon, and there were a lot of people, and it was unclear whether it was more than 100, but it was definitely more than half 100. You two, hurry up, someone is coming. Kerr gritted his teeth, ducked into the dark night, and cautiously moved towards the entrance of the mine. He didn't agree with his words, but he was very honest with his body. He would block the progress of the Death Church within his ability and share some pressure for Wayne and Mona. In the direction of the mine entrance, 3 trucks came to a screeching halt. Nearly 60 people jumped out of the crowded truck, each wearing a helmet and a flashlight. Inside the truck, there were green wooden boxes containing ammunition. The situation in the mine is very complex and it is impossible to bring in an open flame. Weapons and equipment are used to set up a cordon and guard the entrance and exit of the mine. The old man in a black suit stood at the entrance of the mine. He was tall and straight, holding a civilization stick in his hand. His clothes and hairstyle were meticulous, and his black leather shoes were polished. His facial features were majestic and his brows were quite imposing. He was the Bishop Sebastian who Dunn had been waiting for a long time. It's too late, Dunn has returned to the embrace of the goddess. Sebastian smelled the smell of blood in the air, followed the smell and looked towards the soil not far away. A gloomy look flashed in his eyes. Although Wayne buried the bones, his method was crude and simple, and he could not hide it from an old fox like Sebastian. He could tell with just one glance that Dunn had died at the hands of a magician from the Church of Nature. Death and nature are incompatible, new grudges add to old grudges. Sebastian holds the civilization stick tightly and vows to refine the other party into his own skeleton soldier. Jinn, ask your people to guard this place. Not a single mouse can be released. Set up the cordon and check the surroundings again to confirm all the entrances and exits of the mine. Oscar, Mana, you two take people in with me and show no mercy to anyone you meet. Sebastian gave the order and looked at the sleeping waste on both sides of the mine. These are Wells's lackeys, almost all of whom wear police uniforms. The mayor exacts excessive taxes and continuously provides blood transfusions to the Church of Death. They rely on them to bully the unruly people. They are all contributors to the Church of Death. There is hard work without merit and should be rewarded. Sebastian did not notice Wells, and his anger grew stronger. He said coldly, "I will not blame you for your failure, and I am willing to give you a chance for revenge. Use your own hands." He picked up the civilization stick and tapped it gently on the ground. A ray of death spread out and turned into a grey arm surrounding Wells' lackey. Flesh and blood peeled off, and the fishy smell spread. As the rotting pus and blood sank into the ground, a row of skeleton soldiers removed their ribs to use as swords and stepped into the mine according to their master's orders. "Go and find the natural mage who killed you." The movement speed of the dozen or so skeleton soldiers could not be said to be very fast. It was slower than ordinary people walking. By the time they had finished searching the complex mine, Wayne had already rolled up the stone slab and ran away. Sebastian understood this and murmured magic spells in his mouth, waving the civilized stick in front of him. The civilized stick tore through the space like a sharp sword, opening a curtain of darkness and lightlessness. Pale skeleton soldiers walked out one by one, with white light dancing in their eye sockets. They were more energetic than the dozen or so unlucky guys before. At first glance, they were high-level soldiers. This is not the strongest unit that Sebastian has trained. His most proud work is the 3 cavalry. He was lucky enough to see the Death Knight in the underground catacombs of Paris. The heroic appearance lingers in his mind. Using the Death Knight as a template, he spent a lot of effort to create 3 cavalry. These 3 cavalrymen all possess mature wisdom and are tainted with a strong aura of death. Each of them can play his own role. Taking the head of the silver mage from among the thousands of troops is like picking something out of a bag. The terrain of the mine was not suitable for summoning cavalry, so he did not show his best work. The 2 teams of skeleton soldiers gathered together, and as the aura of death spread out from the civilized sticks, white light danced in their eyes, and they rushed towards the depths of the mine tunnel with vigorous steps. Through these lifeless eyes, Sebastian's perception is magnified and he can see every detail in the mine. "Great Death Knight, I will complete your mission, get the tablet and send it to Paris." Deep in the mine, Wayne followed Mona carefully. The vines could only be explored and could not guarantee the safety of the surrounding area. Just in case, he still used his old tricks. When in doubt, protect your teammates. The idea was good, but his behavior and habits were exposed. His strong personal style made Mona feel that the master was behind him more and more. The 2 continued to march forward for another 300 meters. The mine was so narrow that only one person could pass through it. The air was turbid and toxic gases were present, making their breathing gradually become heavier. Wayne shook his head. It was too irrational to move forward, too narrow, and claustrophobic. Mona still insisted. All other areas had been explored, leaving only this virgin land. Moreover, Wayne also said that the traps left behind have been triggered one by one, and the Death Church is behind them. Now that they retreat, all the previous achievements will be wasted. After walking dozens of steps, the 2 of them walked almost close to the gap. Mona turned on the flashlight and saw a glimmer of darkness at the end of the narrow passage. Different from the surrounding darkness, this darkness is deeper, the light cannot reach the end, and there is a huge space inside. "Found it?" Mona stepped on the collapsed gravel, squeezed forward against the cracks in the stone wall, and struggled through the barrier. The light hit the ground and saw the neat stone structure. "This is it." Behind him, Wayne briefly merged with the Book of Greed, and his boneless body slid along the gap, following Mona at a safe distance of 2 meters, and stepped into a dark underground space. The flashlight's light has a limited range, so Mona shines in all directions and can't see anything. Wayne narrowed his eyes slightly, injecting magic power into his eyes to strengthen his supervision, and a grey 3-dimensional silhouette appeared in front of him. This seemed to be an abandoned underground ruins, which reminded him of the lair of the thousand-eyed demon, but unlike the city summoned by the devil, the architectural style of the two was completely different. The architectural style of the city in front of you has only one characteristic: big. The towering walls, exaggerated pillars standing hundreds of meters tall, and the obelisk in the center of the city that sticks straight into the top of the elemental mountains make it look like a city where giants live. Are there giants in God's chosen continent? No, except that Wayne never found any actual traces of the giant's existence in the documented records. This ruins. From another world. Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 147. The ruins of the giant city are in darkness and have been buried underground for who knows how many years. Wayne looked at the obelisk in the distance in confusion. It was very big and majestic, reaching straight to the top of the mountain, even higher than the elemental mountain. So, why wasn't anyone discovered? Wayne is not referring to the Death Church group. This group does not count. Like him, they are all latecomers of the era. He was referring to the ancestors. Such a large monument was unearthed by casual digging. It was discovered on the same day, cut up the next day, and put on display at the Windsor Museum, which shows the magnanimity of a great nation. So, why hasn't anyone discovered it yet? It's not difficult to get in. Wayne couldn't figure out why, and suspected that there was another doorway here. He subconsciously waved his hand and pulled open an earth wall to block the entrance to the crack in the stone wall. The trigger traps he left behind were broken through one by one. Phantom spores, sleeping spores, and parasitic spores were arranged and combined. I was confident that ordinary people would get whatever they came for in vain. The magician had to shed his skin even if he died, so he had plenty of time to find the stone slab. I don't have time to be dazed. I have good eyesight and saw a big guy. Let's go over there and have a look. Wayne flicked the fireball from his fingertips, floating forward to illuminate the ground, and then took the lead, letting Mona take the lead. Walk fast and be careful not to step on the traps. The ruins of the City of Giants have rich reserves of 4 elements, and are as high as 2.5 London sewers. If the entire mining area has such an exaggerated elemental content, the elemental mountain is well deserved, and the name is correct. Mona, do you know the history of how Elemental Mountain got its name? Not sure. Mona shook her head. Elemental Mountain is not a strategic location and there are few marks on the big map. When the copper mine was there, people still mentioned it. After the copper mine was abandoned, the residents of Silent Hill moved away. Most of them went to factories in big cities to drive screws, and no one cared about it. As for the name of the elemental mountain, Mona learned it and used it to tell Wayne not to always think like a magician. Gold, silver, copper, and iron are also elements. Hey, you learn pretty fast. Wayne didn't ask for the result, and was too lazy to use up his brain cells to reason. It didn't matter whether Elemental Mountain was a holy place for practice before. So what, he was not in that era. The two of them walked faster and faster in the darkness, not triggering any traps along the way. Perhaps the mechanism was in disrepair, perhaps the traps only targeted large creatures, such as the giant himself, or perhaps there were no mechanisms here at all. Wayne was halfway ahead of schedule. Arrived at the obelisk in the hour. This is a square pillar with a sharpened top. It looks tall and majestic from a distance. When you get closer, you can't even see the tip of the monument when you look up. Wayne roughly estimated that the length of one side of the cube alone was more than 300 meters, and the overall height definitely much higher than the elemental mountains. This is not the first time that Wayne has encountered overlapping spaces. The small town of Cafagno is haunted by death, the misty world encountered on the way to Jianhe County, the ruined ancient city where the thousand-eyed demon descended, and even the lava swallowed by the gate of hell. Territories are the best examples of spatial overlap. The God's Choice continent is not stable and is easily affected by outside interference. Wayne walked around the obelisk and saw a large number of horizontal and oblique grooves on the surface of the cube. These lines were interspersed on all sides of the obelisk, like energy transmission tracks, giving it a very sci-fi feel. Wayne blinked and imagined a Star Destroyer cannon with 4 elements as energy. Once the cannon was fired, the moon would be gone. Moonlight is so miserable. No, next door is Eclipse Town, and it should be the sun that was bombed. Wayne put on gloves and touched the surface of the obelisk. The rock particles felt obvious to the touch and were not made of metal. He tried to input a ray of magic power, and white light swayed on the surface of the obelisk. The light went from strong to weak, and faded out completely after about 10 meters. The conductivity of magic power is excellent. The real hammer is the Star Destroyer cannon. Some criminals want to fire on the goddess. Mona saw Wayne's operation and followed suit, trying to find the relic writing on the surface of the obelisk. The reality was very skinny and nothing was found. The two of them worked for about 10 minutes, but got nothing. Maybe the slab isn't here. Mona looked at the dark ruins of the giant city and said worriedly, "Let's go. Even if there are thousands of people, it will be difficult to search all the ruins in a short time. Let's leave here first to avoid being blocked by the people of the Death Church. Is there a possibility that this obelisk is the so-called stone slab?" Wayne looked up at the sky. For humans, the square stone slab was 30 centimeters long and wide, no larger than a tombstone. But those who built the ruins were giants, and it was impossible to make the stone slabs the size of fingernails. Judging from their architectural style of advocating big is justice, the more important things were made larger. The scale of the stone slabs produced can be imagined. The question is, if his guess is true, do the people in the Church of Death know that the stone slab is an obelisk? If you knew, how would you transport the obelisk and where would it be transported? Such a big thing will stand out wherever you put it, so there must be a way to shrink it. Just as Wayne was thinking about it, a loud noise suddenly came from the distance. The earthen wall he had erected was violently shattered, which was particularly loud among the ruins where a pin drop could be heard. "Coming after me." Mona frowned and rested for several hours. She had gotten rid of the dizziness and nausea stage, but when it came to participating in high-intensity battles, she was a hindrance. "Let's go, hide first and find a commanding height. Let them explore the ruins. If there are too many people, we will be ready to run away." Wayne patted Mona and walked towards the dark area behind him. "Let's lay an ambush first. Whether we can find the lost stone tablet today depends on the performance of the Death Church. I hope I don't disappoint him, otherwise he will go crazy and transform into a Death Knight, which will make everyone look ugly." Mona moved at high speed, trailing 2 positions behind Wayne. Seeing the opportunity, she reached forward and grabbed it. "Got it?" Wayne stopped stiffly, slapped the hand on his butt away, and was extremely speechless. "Detective Mona, what are you doing? It's too dark." "I just stepped on the wrong foot and accidentally touched it." Mona apologized repeatedly, but she didn't want to and her foot slipped. "It's weird to believe you." Wayne rolled his eyes, tapped his toes on the ground, and ran quickly westward. Of course he knew what Mona meant. He just relied on remembering the touch and thought of a trick to identify people by their farts. It's ridiculous. When he was disguising, he had been modified from head to toe with the essence of life. The shape of his buttocks had already changed beyond recognition, and the feel was different. How could he be recognized? Wayne was so confident in his disguise that Mona couldn't recognize it even if she touched him 100 times. Even so, there was still a hint of wariness. The female detective struck quickly and accurately, and she had obviously become suspicious. This made Wayne very puzzled. He couldn't remember where he was exposed. If he slapped the opponent's butt while carrying him, every mentally healthy pervert would do this, and it couldn't be considered a reason to doubt him. What exactly went wrong? Wayne couldn't help but think about writing his sister. Smart women are too difficult to deal with, so he thought of 3 ships. Mona frowned and followed Wayne, looking at her hands from time to time. Although her hands felt wrong, the woman's intuition told her that Wayne and Bruce were most likely the same person. "Wayne, why don't you speak?" "It's..." "Call me boss." "Boss, why don't you say anything? Are you still angry with me? Otherwise, touch me back." "Shut up." Wayne interrupted and said angrily, "Detective Mona, I remember you are a clergyman. As a nun, your behavior should not be so dissolute. Next time, don't come to work in the detective agency." The tone was very serious, not a joke. Mona felt her heart beat faster when she heard it. This was how Bruce scolded her. "It looks more and more like it." Halfway through Wayne's words, he suddenly realized that the surrounding light was much brighter, and he could clearly see the outline of the ruins without using supervision. Giggle. A strange, permeating laughter sounded high in the sky. Wayne looked up and saw a huge skull head high above the ruins. The skull is about 10 meters high. It is a magical creation. It continues to rise into the sky like a small sun, blooming with a death-like gray and cold light. Affected by this energy, Mona's face became extremely ugly, and she gritted her teeth and said, "He is a golden mage. If an ordinary person is bathed in this light for a long time, he will be affected by the environment and become an undead creature. It doesn't matter if you find a room and squat in the sun, it won't matter." Wayne quickened his pace. The entrance to the stone crevice in the ruins was violently widened by the Death Church group, and it was now large enough for several people to pass through in parallel. Rows of skeleton soldiers walked in first, followed by members of the Church of Death headed by Sebastian. Looking at the dark underground ruins, Sebastian raised his civilized stick. The skull carvings on the top clicked shut and the upper and lower jaws closed. Translucent energy rose into the air and skyrocketed to 10 meters, emitting light to dispel the darkness, allowing everyone to see the world more intuitively. Big. The strong visual impact made everyone open their eyes wide, breathe quickly, and exclaim in amazement. "Fkook, XN. There is no need to describe the scale of the giant city ruins. Just pick out a long straight road, which is enough for the skeleton soldiers present to walk side by side." Sebastian poked the civilization stick in his hand, chanted a spell briefly, and summoned the 3 proud skeleton knights. The 3 knights are all wearing armor. The black armor is almost the same style as the Death Knight, and the sword is also hung on the horse's back. However, resemblance does not mean strength. In order to enhance the combat effectiveness of the 3 skeleton knights, Sebastian added thermal weapons and equipment to them. 2 knights carried heavy machine guns in their arms, with ammunition belts wrapped around their arms. 1 knight carried a sniper rifle on his back, and had 2 rows of grenades wrapped around his waist. The times are advancing, and magicians must keep up with the pace of the times, otherwise they will be shot in the head by a sniper rifle from 800 miles away, sooner or later, or noon. From this point of view, Sebastian is obviously stronger than other golden mages. Enchanting aircraft, cannons, and battleships is just around the corner. With the help of the white skull lifted into the air, Sebastian's field of vision broadened again. He looked down from a high position and took in the entire ruins of the giant city. Within 10 seconds, he saw 2 little mice fleeing to the west. "Oscar, there are 2 rats in the west. You lead a team of skeleton soldiers to deal with them. If you can capture them alive, bring them to me. I will personally refine them into skeleton soldiers. If you can't capture them alive, bring their bodies," Sebastian ordered. At the front of the crowd, a muscular miner walked out. He had a look that Wayne envied extremely, and his face was full of flesh. He didn't even need to put on makeup to play the villain, he just wanted to go to that station. Oscar took his younger brother with him from his stronghold and left with 50 skeleton soldiers. Sebastian frowned slightly, remembering Dunn, who was killed by the natural mage, and muttered a complicated and lengthy spell just in case. In the sky, the eyes of the huge skull glowed with black light, and it laughed strangely. Two pure black energy crows flapped their wings and flew out, flying towards the location of Wayne and Mona. With the curse of death, it would be foolproof. The rest follow me. Sebastian looked at the obelisk in the distance, marveling that the oracle conveyed by the Death Knight was indeed true, and his mouth curled up slightly. Lost ruins, buried history, everything in the past will eventually return to the embrace of death. Isn't this a kind of fate? The white skull laughed strangely, and two black crows flew out of its eye sockets, heading straight for Wayne and Mona, who were hiding deep in the ruins. The houses in the ruins were particularly tall. As soon as Wayne climbed up a high wall, he saw the curse falling from the sky from a distance. The goddess of death was high above, and the three gods held the divine power on behalf of the goddess and governed the kingdom of God for the goddess. The curse of death was generally divided into three types. Wayne had the good fortune to taste the curse of the observer glue once, and his condition was not serious. The really unlucky ones were Willie and Chris. The former changed her sex, and the latter not only changed her sex but also changed her species. The curse of the observer did not kill Wayne or others. This has a lot to do with the personality of the observer. He would not kill the other party directly through the curse, but would rather torture the other party to collapse by themselves. Therefore, the observer glue is also called the spider of doom. In comparison, the Judge Sane does not have so many tricks. The soul-eating crow sounds very evil, simple, and straightforward, and it will kill you if it strikes. If you have to say the difference, it is nothing more than sudden death on the spot and slow death in pain. Mona climbed up the high wall, looked at the crows coming at a high speed, was horrified, and forcibly cast the holy light magic to defend. This was her last thought. Wayne did not stop her, and waited quietly for Mona to push open a wall of holy light. The strange sound of quacking approached, and the two black crows sank into the holy light and shadow one after another, and the momentum suddenly slowed down. Then, a crow flapped its wings and flew out, its eyes glowing red, and it flew straight into Wayne's chest. "Ah! I'm going to die!" Wayne cried softly, his face a dying gray. Mona sat on the ground dizzy and dazed, her eyelids trembling, biting her lips tightly, relying on the pain to avoid fainting on the spot. There was no time to care about Wayne's situation. The second crow flew out, folded its wings and crashed into her. Mona had no choice but to close her eyes tightly. 3 seconds later, she slowly opened her eyes and looked at the back blocking her in astonishment. "Wayne, are you okay?" Although it was unclear how Wayne had led away the curse, but being hit by the soul-eating crow twice in a row, the terrible effect of the curse was definitely not as simple as 1 + 1. The straight back swayed slightly, and a weak voice was uttered, trying to hold back the pain. "I'm fine, the key is you, sleep if you're tired, don't hold on." Wayne was more than good, he was too good. The crow entering his body was like returning to the nest, and he reconciled on the spot when he saw that it was a misunderstanding. He also gave the Book of Greed a snack. It was not a large amount, but it was better than nothing. Wayne persuaded Mona to fall down quickly. There were many people on the other side, and he was eager to transform and become the boss. Mona refused, and stood up from the ground with a tired mind. Her legs were weak and trembling, and she pulled Wayne's sleeve to prevent herself from falling down. "I still have a little mind left, let's try to transfer the curse. If it's you, you will definitely be able to escape." Wayne was shocked by her spirit of sacrifice. The light was too dazzling, and he felt ashamed. On the bright side, at least his feeling was right. "Go to sleep, maybe you'll be fine after you wake up," Wayne said gently, raising his hand and touching Mona's face. The sweet scent of flowers spread. Mona's eyelids were heavy, and she was panting and almost losing consciousness. She grabbed Wayne's collar fiercely. "This may be a long sleep. Tell me, are you Bruce? I've never heard of this name." You recognized the wrong person. Wayne raised his hand and pinched Mona's neck, and laid her limp body flat on the ground. After thinking about it, he thought it was not appropriate, so he jumped down with her in his arms, flipped through the window like a city gate, and entered the giant's room. Wayne laid Mona flat on the ground, waved his hand to erect 4 earth walls to ensure that the other party would not be affected by the battle, and then looked at the direction of the obelisk. The hunt begins. Restarting the myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 148. Wayne stood on the high wall, looking at the obelisk in the distance. The original plan was to find a commanding point to observe and confirm that the Church of Death had the ability to transport the stone slabs before taking action, but the enemy had installed surveillance and could not hide at all. If you can't hide, there's no need to hide, just walk over openly. Below the high wall, Oscar led his brothers and skeleton soldiers to rush over. The giant's house was extremely unfriendly to ordinary people. Looking at the towering stone wall, Oscar waved his hand and ordered the skeleton soldiers to climb up first. He saw the soul-eating crows and confirmed that the 2 enemies were half dead. He followed the bishop's order to bring the 2 alive back. Pull out the tendons and skin, wash off the blood and flesh, and use the most cruel method to refine them into skeleton soldiers. 50 skeleton soldiers had just climbed up the wall when they suddenly heard a whirring sound, as if something fell from above. Oscar looked up, and a shadow flashed in his vision, and the black shadow fell to the ground at high speed. Boom! The cracks spread, and the flying earth and stone fragments were like bullets hitting in all directions. Several members of the Church of Death dressed as miners had no time to dodge and were hit by the rubble, and their faces were covered with blood. Wayne stood on the sunken pit, with a ray of gray in his eyes. He was possessed by the immortal body and enjoyed the tranquility of death. His mind was clear and he had an excellent experience. The divine soldiers descended from the sky. The high-profile appearance like a falling object shocked Oscar and others. The wounds on their faces did not hurt anymore. They just stared at Wayne walking out of the gravel pit. Oscar was the first to react and ordered the skeleton soldiers to attack. Rows of skeleton soldiers jumped down from the wall, and their lifeless eyes were full of confusion. Wayne restrained his own breath, and with the hidden magic, Oscar and others could not see that he was a dead man. The skeleton soldiers saw their own kind. With their empty brains, they could not run such a complicated command, so they waited on the spot for new orders. "Take me to see your boss and tell him that the Death Knight is looking for him," Wayne said coldly, his eyes full of contempt. "Nonsense." Oscar laughed angrily, and seeing that the skeleton soldiers were useless, he called his brothers to rush forward. The opponent only had 1 person, and he was cursed, so he had to catch him alive. Wtken. More than a dozen miners were all 6-pointed star-level mages, who did not master any advanced faith magic, and were not even worthy of summoning the power of the agent. They all used the 4 elements magic to greet him. The giant city ruins have a very high element content, but only the silver mages are qualified to mobilize these 4 elements floating in the air. The miners can only use the 4 elements obtained by meditation, crackling, and clattering, and the fight is extremely lively. The afterimage flashed by, and the black figure rushed out of the flame wall and flashed in front of a miner. At the moment of passing each other, the miner flew backwards as if he had hit a train head-on, blood gushing out of his mouth and nose in mid-air, and he was only breathing out when he landed. Wayne's figure flickered, moving at a speed that ordinary people could hardly react to. He did not transform into a Death Knight on the spot to prove himself. He was ready to consume the opponent's living forces first, and then transform after killing the golden wizard who was left alone. He did not regard the believers of death as his own people just because he was a Death Knight. It had nothing to do with the so-called camp, nor was it because good and evil could not coexist. He had a flexible moral bottom line and was very vague about his own positioning. How could he be qualified to accuse others of being villains? In the final analysis, it was nothing more than the account book of Mayor Wells was too bloody. If he could tolerate this, he was afraid that he would become such a person in the future. Return to the embrace of death. The cold voice echoed in the field. Oscar saw that his hard-trained younger brother was killed and injured, and the skeleton soldiers turned a blind eye. He was so angry that his eyes were wide open. He recruited the free fire elements around him and shaped his mind into a giant flaming python. The ruins contain extremely high levels of the four elements, and it is easy to summon a large amount of fire elements. The giant python is 100 meters long and emits an astonishingly high temperature. When it opens its mouth, you can faintly see the rolling waves of fire inside, which are like lava flowing and extremely oppressive. Oscar did not attack immediately, and his brothers saw this and crawled behind him. Wayne glanced at the giant python with its head lowered and its bloody mouth spewing flames. Not bad, at least it is remarkable in shaping, which makes me feel itchy. He waved his hand and the surging fire elements swarmed in, as if they would not retreat even if they broke their heads. The long tail of red flames spread down, and the fine scales were arranged vividly. The giant python was close to the ground, with wisps of green smoke rising, its head raised high, and the golden snake pupils flashed fiercely. There are 8 such heads in total. The 8-headed python summoned by Wayne was even bigger, like a moving volcano, winding and emitting suffocating heat waves. The 2 pythons confronted each other, and the air was scorching. Oscar's eyes widened. Incredible, how could the other side be so big? A new formula? The python shaped by the fire element had no fear, and would not be inferior and afraid because of someone's small size, but as the 8-headed python opened its bloody mouth, the python in front of Oscar collapsed on the spot, the fire wave merged into the 8-headed python, and another head grew out. Hydra. Oscar was stunned by the unprecedented operation. This was the first time he knew that magic could be betrayed. He. Wayne smiled heartily, pressed down with 5 fingers, and ordered the Hydra to let the other party feel its enthusiasm. 9 heads were raised high, and the scorching red light swept across the dark sky. 9 pillars of fire pierced the earth, and the rolling sea of fire burned fiercely. The scorching heat even ignited the air at this moment. What's going on? At the obelisk, Sebastian used the high-altitude monitoring to detect the raised-headed flaming Hydra, and the surging fire element was raging across the earth. It's not Oscar. Even if the relic elements are rich, he can't cast magic of this intensity. It can only be the enemy. Sebastian's face sank. He hated this uncontrollable situation. He had already given the enemy a buff, but something unexpected happened. This made him feel a little uneasy. My knight, cut off the enemy's head and bring it back. At Sebastian's command, the 3 skeleton knights straightened their backs, drove the white bone war horses under their crotch, and led all the skeleton soldiers to march westward. Maybe I'm overthinking. Sebastian's ominous premonition did not subside, but instead intensified. He looked at Mana beside him. Follow them and see what's going on over there. Act according to circumstances. You are allowed to use the power of the executor. Understood. Mana was wearing a miner's suit, and his thin figure looked like a skeleton in human skin. He disappeared into the darkness with a few flash steps. Speed up, set up all the magic circles within 2 minutes. Although Sebastian felt something was wrong, the most urgent thing was to take out the stone tablet sealed in the obelisk. Unsealing the seal would consume a huge amount of the 4 elements. Even if the magic circle was used to gather the reserve elements of the entire giant city ruins, it would be a drop in the bucket. Fortunately, the problem was not big. He had prepared everything before coming. Sebastian took out 4 rings from his arms, representing earth, fire, water, and wind, respectively. They were provided by the Death Knight in the underground tomb of Paris. After years of accumulation, the reserve was enough to fill 3 Parises in an instant. More than enough. Sebastian's eyes flashed with greed. The Death Knight did not say to take back the ring. In other words, after the seal was unlocked, the remaining 4 elements were his reward. Under his scolding, the miners arranged the magic circle at the fastest speed, and then placed the ring. A large amount of earth, fire, water, and wind elements were injected, climbing along the energy slots on the 4 sides of the obelisk, and quickly rushed to the top of the tower. Boom! The Hydra was raging and rolling, with agility that was completely different from its huge size. Every time it swung its long tail, it could set off a hot and raging wind. Its winding figure left a series of melted red gullies on the ground. Faced with this natural disaster like behemoth, Oscar's brothers had no spare energy to fight back. Before the Hydra approached, it was dried up by the hot wind, shrunken and fell to the ground and burned. Oscar tried his best but couldn't stop the Hydra from killing. Bathing in the high-temperature heat wave, cursing, his quality was worrying. He stood and hid behind a high wall. Seeing the Hydra rumbling towards him, he rolled up his sleeves to reveal the black tadpole symbol. A mysterious spell sounded, and Oscar's eyes were empty, showing the grayness that only dead people have. A blazing sea of fire rushed over, submerging Oscar's position and turning everything around into ashes. The Hydra bathed in the sea of fire, and its body burned up. After the sea of fire dissipated, it disappeared. In the burning area, the black and red magma was flowing everywhere. The temperature was so high that it melted the walls that stood like city walls around it. The air was so distorted that it seemed that the space was in chaos. The white footbones stepped on the hot magma and walked towards Wayne step by step. At the last moment, Oscar borrowed the power of the agent to let himself enter the empty state of death. This mode is very similar to Wayne now. He is immortal and not afraid of pain, but because the temperature of the flame is too high, he did not keep his flesh and blood and remained in a constant skeleton state. Wayne raised his lips and said sinisterly, "Let me guess. When the divine power you borrowed is exhausted, will you fall on your back or will your skeleton fall apart? Neither is right." Oscar stepped out of the lava, his bones touching the ground, and he ran faster and faster. "Your body will be taken over by me, and you will be the one who dies." "Oh, the divine power of the agent can also be said to be possessed?" Wayne exclaimed, "Another useless new posture." Seeing Oscar rushing towards him, he did not dodge or evade, but stretched out one hand to hold down the opponent's skull head, and with a terrifying force pressed down, the skeleton fell to the ground with a squeak. "I got you!" Oscar shouted in ecstasy, and the process was unexpectedly simple. 2 pieces of bone arms stretched out and clamped Wayne's arms tightly. The aura of death soared, and behind Oscar, it turned into a black-robed shadow holding a sickle, sweeping and slashing at Wayne. The sickle passed through Wayne's body, disintegrated into mist, and the shadow disappeared immediately afterwards. In front of Wayne, the skeleton crackled and fell apart. He weighed the skull in his hand and threw it on the ground. Ordinary stuff. If he switched to another mode, Wayne would not be so easy to deal with. The Silver Wizard of the Church of Death. Now the father beats the son, and he can beat him however he wants. He doesn't even need to do anything, just stand still and wait for the other party to die on him. After dealing with this group of elites of the Church of Death, Wayne glanced at the confused skeleton soldiers behind him. The latter were still waiting for the mission. In this case, he would give the order. "There is danger." Bang! A gunshot sounded, and Wayne just noticed the warning, and his shoulder and arm were hit hard, and the whole person flew out sideways. He rolled twice on the ground, covering his unconscious arms, and looked towards the commanding heights with his eyes focused. A skeleton on a skeletal horse, a sniper. What combination is this? And the version has been updated to this point. Wayne saw that his whole body was in bad shape, so he prepared to equip himself with double guns when he went back. From now on, he would stop being a death knight and become a death cowboy. Throw a lasso out, and if you catch it, it's a scalp. The crisis warning came again, and Wayne rolled sideways. In his original position, smoke was rising from a bullet hole. The sound of dense footsteps and horse hooves came, and two skeleton knights with heavy firepower made Wayne cry out, riding a warhorse and leading the skeleton soldiers to parade around, completing the pretense he wanted to pretend but failed to do. Envy.jpg. The skeleton infantry surrounded them from all directions, and the skeleton soldiers who were waiting for the mission joined the queue. The three skeleton knights were indeed Sebastian's proud works. They had good intelligence, knew who the enemy was, and could directly give orders to the skeleton soldiers. Your figure is pretty good. It's mine now. Wayne reached out with one hand and pulled the shadow nightmare out of the void. The pure snow-like blade reflected light, reflecting Wayne's skull face. He was wearing black armor and completed his transformation the moment he took the knight's sword. The portal opened, and the undead warhorse Yulia was summoned by the shadow nightmare. It bent its front hooves and waited for its master to ride. Wayne turned over and jumped onto the undead horse, holding up the knight's sword in his hand. The broken cloak condensed by the air of death moved without the wind behind him. At the end of the hilt of the knight's sword, the ruby gleamed faintly, and the surging death impact spread out, sweeping across the entire field, drowning all the bones and skeletons. The two skeleton knights dismounted, raised their hands to touch their chests, and knelt down on one knee. The skeleton infantrymen straightened their backs and raised their weapons in salute. The sniper who was at the commanding heights landed as fast as he could. After falling to the ground, it was all over the place. Before he could pick up his head and put it on, he knelt down and saluted while holding his chest. On the ground, Oscar, who was abandoned by Wayne, stood up again, holding a broken rib above his head. How is this possible? From a corner not far away, there was an exclamation. The sound was not loud, but it was particularly clear in the silent environment. Why are you hiding? Come here. Wayne's skull head pulsed with white light, and he looked fiercely towards the source of the sound. As soon as he finished speaking, Mana trotted and accelerated to the front of the undead horse. He knelt down and tried to kiss Wayne's boots, but Yulia raised his front hoof and kicked him in the face. Yulia, I haven't licked it yet today, it's your turn then. Mana received the hoof, his face full of joy. Don't be aggrieved, these are the hoof prints of the Death Knight. Rounded up, they are the holy marks of the Church of Death. No matter how many people kneel down, they can't find a way. I won't wash my face anymore. The great Death Knight, the proclaimer of the oracle, the master of the underground catacombs. Mana knelt down again and recited a bunch of titles eloquently, and then said, the Archbishop, Bishop Sebastian is unsealing the obelisk, and the stone slab will be taken out soon. Mana originally wanted to call him Bishop, but it was wrong to think about it. Bishop was an adult to him, but in front of the chosen Knight of Death, Sebastian was not qualified to receive the honorific title, and he was not even a villain. Yes, I see your loyalty. Keep working hard, and your benefits will be indispensable. Thank you for your generosity. Working for you is our greatest reward. Marner was surprised and delighted, and couldn't help but ask, Dear Lord Knight, why do you want to punish Oscar? Is there anything he did wrong? Raise your head, and I'll tell you the answer. Wayne was condescending and slowly raised the shadow nightmare. Mana swallowed, carefully raised his head, and looked directly at the chosen knight at close range, trying not to make his gaze appear offensive. Aha! As a ray of white light fell, Mana's head rolled to the ground. Those eyes were full of shock, and he didn't understand why he split up. Am I dead? Why did I die? Why did the knight kill me? Because I kissed his boots without permission? Isn't this a lack of kiss? Mana couldn't figure it out, and the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. In anger, he transformed into a skeleton soldier, holding a rib scimitar in his hand, and stood side by side with Oscar. Wayne didn't know that if he endured the transformation for a while longer, he might be able to see the power of the last agent, the executor Winter Wings Eisern. Lead the way ahead, I want to see Sebastian. The skeleton infantry were divided into two teams. 3 skeleton knights mounted their horses and walked at the front of the queue. Balls of cold light danced around the Death Knights and walked towards the obelisk. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Restarting the Myth. Author, Feng Chao Huang. Chapter 149. What happened? My knight lost contact. In front of the obelisk, Sebastian, who was waiting for the stone slab to be unsealed, was shocked and lost his voice. Not only the knights he had carefully cultivated, but also the skeleton soldiers he had summoned had lost their senses. Suffering a devastating blow, the whole army was wiped out. Impossible. The magic fluctuations were so strong that it was impossible for nothing to happen when 3 skeleton knights were destroyed at once. Sebastian hurriedly switched perspectives and looked through the white skull. Skeleton soldiers didn't matter, there was no end to the leaks, but the skeleton knights were his painstaking work, and they couldn't just sacrifice in such a muddle. In the sky, the white skull slowly lowered its head, and the scene of the skeleton parade came into Sebastian's eyes. Leading the way were 3 skeleton knights, who walked in unison, in a neat formation, and walked slowly and unhurriedly towards the obelisk. The knight in the center rode on an undead warhorse, wearing black armor, and his tattered grey cloak moved without wind. He seemed to sense his sight and slowly looked up. Death Knight. Sebastian was even more surprised. If it was a Death Knight, he would indeed be able to deprive the skeleton core of control. He was surprised why the Death Knight was in Silent Hill, why was he in the ruins, and why he was asked to find the stone tablet. This is unreasonable. Did something happen? Sebastian was puzzled and hurried to the queue. Great Death Knight, Sebastian greets you. Sebastian came to the front of the queue and touched his chest with one hand to show respect. He did not feel resentful because the skeleton core was taken away. Sebastian, has the seal of the stone tablet been unlocked? Wayne said faintly, looking towards the obelisk. The rich elemental fluctuations made him salivate. If he had not lost his salivary glands after the transformation, his saliva would have flowed down. Report to the knight, I have just finished the arrangement. I have to wait a little longer. Well, you did a good job, saving me a lot of time. Wayne sighed meaningfully. Sebastian dare not take credit for everything. Everything is due to your good leadership. It was you who pointed out the location of the stone slab and provided the elemental ring. I was just carrying out the task. Well said. I see your loyalty to the goddess. After the matter is accomplished, I will personally recommend you to the goddess. There must be a place for you in the kingdom of God. Wayne painted a pie in the sky. Thank you for your generosity. These are what I should do. Sebastian was deeply moved and excited to the point of tears. He raised his sleeves to wipe his tears and took the opportunity to glance at the Death Knight. The conversation felt very strange. It seemed that the knight today was a little different from before. There was no difference in appearance. The undead warhorse and the artifact Shadow Nightmare were all fine. It was just the tone and voice of speaking. Did the Death Knight change his voice again? Sebastian had seen the Death Knight twice in the Paris catacombs. The first time, the Death Knight appeared in full gear, and his majestic appearance left a deep impression on him. He was inspired and copied the other party's style. The second time, the Death Knight summoned Sebastian and ordered him to find the stone slab. He did not see the Death Knight's true appearance. When he issued the task, there was a thick barrier between them. The voices were different both times. The first time was sonorous and powerful, with a strong courage that could not be rejected. The second time was dull and hoarse, and it was so cold that it made people feel scared. The third time was different again. Although it was still high and mighty, it was obviously much more friendly. It was light and a little more human. Sebastian liked the current Death Knight. The first 2 times he was unattainable, he was trembling like a minion, and he was afraid of flattering the horse's hoof. He led the way in front to welcome the Death Knight, and a group of busy miners also came to salute. Sebastian, don't waste time, quickly unlocked the seal of the obelisk. Wayne ignored a group of licking dogs and looked at the obelisk. The 4 energy slots flashed different lights, and the 4 elements were continuously injected. The more I looked at it, the more sci-fi it became. I always felt that the moonlight would be blasted down with a shot when the energy was accumulated. I understand. Sebastian shouted loudly, asking his subordinates to speed up the action, set up a few more magic circles, and use all the 4 elements in the ruins. Sebastian stood on the side of the undead warhorse, looked at the 2 skeletons among the skeleton soldiers, and frowned. Sir Knight, Oscar and Mana are elites trained by the church for many years. They have also been favored by the agent. I don't know why they offended you. I said I was a Death Knight, they didn't believe it, so I proved it to them. Sebastian's mouth twitched. Such a big undead sword, even a blind man could see it, what was there to prove? He didn't dare to say that the Death Knight killed loyal people indiscriminately, and speculated that Oscar and Mana were seeking their own death and said something they shouldn't have said. Sir Knight, there are 2 little mice in the west, one of which is a cultist of nature. I am that cultist. According to the oracle of the goddess, the holy war is about to begin, and the stone slab is also prepared for this. I came to Windsor to destroy the Church of Nature from within. Wayne was talking nonsense, trying to get more information from Sebastian. He was very curious about the current situation of the real Death Knight. According to the Thousand Eyes demon, he has been controlled by the Demon King of Hell and is working for others with the salary of the goddess. On Dragonheart Island, Wayne failed to summon the Shadow Nightmare. The Death Knight interfered and showed the ability to take back the Shadow Nightmare at any time. But the Death Knight did not do this. He was strict with himself, treated others with ease, and allowed Wayne to play with his sword and ride his horse. With such a great mind, even the Bull Knight Wayne would believe him. There is obviously something wrong. Sebastian was surprised by the Death Knight's operation. He felt that it was a bit redundant, and he suddenly realized, no wonder you bypassed your subordinates and established a new stronghold in London. But in that case, why didn't you summon me in London? All the way to Paris. Where do you get so many problems? Wayne interrupted directly, saying that the leader has the final right to interpret. He changed the order from day to day to adapt to changes, and the moody call was to use both kindness and power. The subordinates just obeyed the order and it was done. There was so much curiosity. Sebastian decisively stopped talking. Seeing how obedient he was, Wayne simply let go and asked directly, while the seal on the slate has not yet been unlocked, I am here to test you. When I assigned the task, I told you what. He looked down at Sebastian, and the 2 white lights in his eyes suddenly shrank. You like knights so much, and if you dare to miss a word, I will turn you into a skeleton knight. Sebastian's head clacked, secretly thinking that something bad was going on. The leader discovered that he copied the leader's style. He said hurriedly, I have been active in Windsor these years. According to the church's strategic deployment, I stayed away from London and was not allowed to get close. Until Guy conveyed your order, The goddess of death has a general reputation in the chosen continent. Except for a few countries, the Church of Death cannot operate openly, and Windsor is no exception. There is a belief in death, but they all operate in secret. Sebastian is a golden mage who also serves as a bishop and is the top person in charge of the Church of Death in Windsor. According to the orders of the Church, he cannot leave Windsor without reason, nor can he enter the capital, London. At the same time, another order was issued to collect intelligence on London and grasp the movements of the phalanx as soon as possible. There is no contradiction between the two orders. Sebastian cannot enter London, which does not mean that he cannot place spies in the system. Eclipse Town is very close to London, and Mayor Wells is a pawn in the plan. Through the mayor's bribery, he expanded his circle of upper-level connections, and then used the bribery account as a threat to ask for London's information. There are many chess pieces like Wells, who are basically not in London but have eyes and ears all over London. The Death Knight summoned Sebastian in Paris and made him disobey two orders in succession, not to leave Windsor and not to approach London. Guy is the top person in charge of the Death Church in Farrock. Because of the existence of the underground tomb, the strong ones are blocked by the Death Knight. His little life is very nourishing, and his power is developing vigorously. Guy conveyed the summons of the Death Knight, and Sebastian entered Paris illegally and obtained the mission of the Ring and Slate. You told me that the stone slab sealed in the obelisk is related to a buried history. There was a fallen god. God of storm and thunder. His name has been erased and does not exist in any known history. His divine power resides in the stone slab, scattered in every corner of the god's chosen continent. On the day of reunion, the divine power of storm and thunder will surely be used by the goddess. The moment the stone slab appears, other slate holders can see this place, and you also gave the Book of Seals. Sebastian paraphrased the exact words, not even a word, not even a single punctuation mark. At the end, he said respectfully, unlocking the seal requires a massive force of the four elements. You gave me 4 rings, my subordinate. I don't dare to take it as my own, so I'm going to return it together with the stone tablet. Erased history. God of storm and thunder. It has a great name, it is both storm and thunder, which sounds quite powerful at first glance, and the Book of Greed is a good meal again. There was also the initial battle of faith, and I am afraid more than one god fell. Wayne was fascinated by what he heard and became greedy for a moment. He nodded and said, Sebastian, it's just because it's so important that I go there in person. There is no need to send it to Paris. I will take the stone tablet and the ring with me. As it should be. Sebastian lowered his head, feeling somewhat depressed. After a busy trip, he didn't catch anything, and he also lost 2 generals. What about the skeleton army? Will the Death Knight directly bring it back to the underground catacombs? Sebastian could completely imagine how crazy his enemy Guy would laugh when he learned about this. 1 letter every day, nothing written, just ha ha ha. Wayne asked a few more questions and asked Sebastian to answer them one by one in the name of assessment. In the latter's opinion, these questions were without nutrition and the answers were all taken for granted. Although today's Death Knight was very strange, Sebastian did not doubt that the other party was a fake. As he said, faith makes people firm, and religion makes people ignorant. Once you believe it deeply, you will definitely fall into it. While the two were talking, the younger brothers arranged several more magic circles, busying themselves just to satisfy the leader. Under the joint charge of the 4 elements of the ring and the ruins, the energy tank impacted to the top of the obelisk. At the sharp corner, a dazzling arc of electricity burst out, sweeping high into the sky and opening a curtain of thunder. A pale light illuminated the entire giant city ruins. The white skull cast by Sebastian was affected by lightning and turned into a wisp of smoke. Sebastian had no time to be surprised and looked straight at the greatly changed obelisk. Lightning poured down along the energy tank, peeling off a large number of brick and stone fragments along the way. The strong impact shook the earth, and the falling boulders caused heavy casualties to the miners. When the white light dissipated, a crack was knocked open above the ruins, and a boulder fell from time to time, and the dim moonlight shone into the ruins of the giant city through the gap. The obelisk peeled off the surface boulders, reflecting the moonlight to reveal its true appearance. The obelisk, about 100 meters high, stood upright, made of gold, and engraved with a giant pattern holding a thunderstorm, reflecting the moonlight and shining, like a sharp sword piercing the sky. On Wayne's skull, 2 balls of white light jumped violently. He had good eyesight and could see very clearly that the obelisk was shrinking in size when it peeled off its outer shell, from the initial unmeasurable to the current height of 100 meters. It was still shrinking. The shrinking process was accompanied by the friction sound of the mechanism reorganization, and the obelisk finally shrank to 50 meters before stopping. For giants, this size is just right, and for ordinary people, it is still tall and majestic. The miners who survived by chance, including Sebastian, held their breath, their eyes full of greed for gold. In the Death Knight mode, Wayne was clear-headed and quickly recovered from the shock. He snorted coldly, "Sebastian, seal the obelisk immediately. I told you that once the stone slab is unsealed, it will be noticed by others." Sebastian shuddered and rushed to the obelisk. He looked up at the complex text he had never seen before, waved his civilized stick to open the black curtain, and 2 skeleton soldiers walked out carrying a black cover book. The black book is 50 centimeters long, 30 centimeters wide, and more than 15 centimeters thick. It is more like a file box. The sealed book. The back of the black cover is the spine and 2 rows of ribs, and the cover is a pair of crossed bone arms, which is quite in the style of the Church of Death, but the skull embedded in the center of the cover is full of hell style. A pale face, a black keratin mask covering the bridge of the nose, and 2 rows of symmetrical red slanted eyes. The skeleton soldier gently placed the sealed book on the ground, making a heavy sound of touching the ground. Sebastian opened the sealed book, and the dark tide surged inside. There was no page, proving again that it was a file box. The sealed book had already set the trigger mode. After it was opened, black chains sprang out from the tide, thickened and enlarged in mid-air, and wrapped around the obelisk slab and tied it tightly. Then, a pair of pale arms stretched out from the sealed book. The white arms were slender, and the 10 nails were slender and black. They also thickened and enlarged, clamped the obelisk on both sides, and lifted it up to the air. Under the joint action of the chains and the ghost hand, the obelisk slowly shrank until it could just fit into the sealed book. The process was smooth, and Sebastian was obviously well prepared. To be more precise, the hell-evil god who controlled the Death Knight behind the scenes had prepared everything and was waiting for the Death Knight to send the sealed book over. Sebastian took back the ring, closed the sealed book, and completed the task perfectly, and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this moment, the earth rumbled and trembled, and the earthquake continued. The ruins lost the obelisk, or in other words, lost the core pillar of the overall balance. The space where they were located overlapped with the elemental mountain in a physical sense. Under the reset, the ruins and the mountain collided violently. Die together. Seeing that the elemental mountain was about to collapse, Sebastian hurriedly came to Wayne with the seal book and ring. "Great Death Knight, please allow my subordinates to leave first. They still have to serve the goddess and should not be buried here." "It doesn't matter, I will send them away directly." Wayne took the ring and pulled out the shadow nightmare. Under Sebastian's surprised gaze, the surging death aura dissipated, the flesh and blood rotted, and the living were transformed into skeleton soldiers on the spot. "What kind of sending is this, killing people to silence them?" "Sir Knight, what are you doing?" Sebastian was stunned, shocked, confused, and terrified, and he didn't know what to say. Swish. A flash of white light. "No, there's danger." Sebastian pulled away and looked at the Death Knight wielding the butcher knife at him in horror. Luckily he dodged quickly, otherwise. "Why is it so cold?" The Death Knight in Sebastian's eyes slowly separated from the waist, and the upper half of the body tilted down, a line of blood spread out, and slid down with the head of the undead warhorse. The shadow nightmare could not betray its master, and the only one who died was Sebastian. His head was cut off in half diagonally, and his vision was split to see the above scene. Wayne wielded the Shadow Nightmare, and the snow-white blade was not stained with blood. As the sword pointed to the ground, Sebastian turned into a skeleton soldier and stood up with a civilized stick. A golden wizard was gone in such an unclear way. Wayne jumped off the undead warhorse and tucked the Book of Seals under his arm. The background was the collapsing boulders. He was calm and elegant. "Yulia, open the portal." Just as Yulia opened the portal, something strange happened. The Book of Seals touched the body of the Death Knight, and a thought came crashing in. This thought was so huge that it directly knocked Wayne out of the Death Knight state. Grey mist lingered, and a desolate figure appeared in the air. The headless Death Knight in black armor and tattered cloak roared, "Yulia, Shadow Nightmare, what are you doing?" "Wayne. Oh no, the victim is here." Restarting the Myth. Author, Fengchao Huang. Chapter 150. Seeing the green mistress coming to the door, Wayne turned around and looked for the window. 69shux. Com. Not found. Yulia looked at the headless horseman in surprise. "Master, you finally found me. Bring the Shadow Nightmare and the Book of Sealings back to Paris, I need you and my sword." Facing his beloved horse, the Death Knight softened his tone a lot, and then suddenly roared, "Kill this guy who has shamed me. He has tarnished my knight's reputation and blasphemed the goddess." Yulia was stunned for a moment. "Master, he is my new master. He has not blasphemed the goddess, nor has he insulted your reputation. He has been taking care of me during this time, and he is very good to me. Damn it, do you want to hear what you're saying?" The headless horseman was furious, as angry as if he came home with a bouquet of roses after get off work, only to find his wife in the bedroom having sex with the pretty guy next door. It's true, Windsor and Frank are across the sea, and Wayne does live next door. Yulia was very dissatisfied. "Master, it was you who left me behind, and now you blame me. What's wrong with me finding a new master? I didn't do anything wrong. I just like him." Yulia expressed that he was unhappy and wanted to coax him. If he didn't coax him, he would only let Wayne ride in the future. Wayne scratched his face. "What should I say? You are just a passerby. You are all at fault for this matter. Let's stop arguing and calm down." The ruins collided with the mountain. Under the fierce friction, there was a groan of the mountain breaking. The collapse momentum could no longer be stopped. Wayne looked at the Book of Greed to prevent himself from being hit by eating the melon. The energy of death traveled through his body, activating a weakened version of his immortality. Absolute reason takes over the mind. This melon tastes even better. Reason belongs to reason, eating melon is eating melon, they are two different things, there is no contradiction. Just as the quarrel intensified, the headless horseman trembled and hurriedly said to Wayne, "The new knights, they have controlled my mind. It was not my intention just now. I entrust Yulia to you to protect the Shadow Nightmare and the sealed book, we must not let them succeed." A string of question marks floated across Wayne's head, and he was caught by the sudden turn of events. No wonder the Death Knight didn't directly take away the Shadow Nightmare. It turned out that there was also a deep meaning of entrusting his wife and offering his son. He reacted and asked, "You lost your head and lost control of yourself to prevent yourself from making a big mistake, so you sent Yulia and the sword to Windsor." "Yes, I wanted to contact you last time, but you refused." The headless horseman said, "The devils in hell control me. They can change my will, but they cannot change my beliefs. I keep Uriah and Shadow Nightmare away from Paris and wait for the new night to come. Young man, you are very good. The goddess has chosen you. You are the new Death Knight." Having said this, he turned to his beloved horse. "Yulia, if I give you an order again, don't obey it, it is not my will. Follow your new master, he is very good to you, and I am very pleased about this." He said he was happy, but the resentment in his tone was not concealed at all, and it was clear that he didn't mean it. Owner. When Yulia learned the cause and effect, she immediately chose to forgive the other party. She also had something wrong. During the time when the Death Knight was away, her back was itching unbearably, and she couldn't hold it back, so Wayne gave her a good ride. Yulia, there's no need to be nostalgic. I'm not worth it anymore. Don't come back unless I can find myself again. The Headless Horseman was very reluctant to give up. He left himself a way out, hoping that one day he would ride his horse and run wildly. Let me interrupt. Wayne stood in front of Yulia. Important matters were important. Now was not the time for children to have an affair. Headless Horseman, you said they controlled you, aren't you a devil? I'm not the Headless Horseman. It's an alliance of devils. There are so many of them. They want to spread faith in the world through me and accumulate strength to overthrow a devil king of hell. The Headless Horseman said, their faith has spread in Paris, their ambitions are huge, and they will definitely touch the world. Remember, I can only stay awake for a short time. Once the Shadow Nightmare returns to Paris, I will definitely snatch it away. Don't come over. Wayne nodded repeatedly. The Headless Horseman can rest assured that Frank is about to become enemy territory. If he gets there, he will be a hammer. I have imposed a seal on myself. If I lose control, I will not actively seek out the Shadow Nightmare. However, my will is becoming more and more out of my control. I call for the Shadow Nightmare again and again. This strong desire will interfere with your use of it. I will seal today's memory. No one knows that the Shadow Nightmare is in your hands. I don't want to be disturbed all the time. When you become stronger, come to Paris and kill me to officially inherit the honor of the Death Knight. After saying this, the Headless Horseman roared again, the grey mist rolled violently, angrily scolded Yulia's traitor for surrendering to the enemy, and vowed to chop off her head. Yulia bowed her head in humiliation, knowing that the other person was out of control and was saying crazy things, but she still couldn't help but feel sad. Don't be afraid, he's just talking, he can't even get through. Wayne gave the Headless Horseman a middle finger and patted Yulia on the head. The latter felt cared for and rubbed his cheek affectionately. Headless Horseman. If he wasn't already dead, he would be so angry at this scene. Although he had no face and had an expressionless skull, Wayne saw a struggling face in his repeated words. Sometimes ferocious, sometimes helpless. The predecessor is so pitiful. Wayne touched his head and thought it was good to have a boss. He wanted to help, but his strength did not allow it. Now, his most powerful power is the Death Knight vest. The genuine one has become a prisoner. How can he, a pirated one, have the ability? Roar, roar, roar. The Headless Knight roared madly, and his mind controlled the grey fog to roll towards Wayne. It was also death, but there was a sea between them. The mind that resided in the Book of Seals could not do anything to Wayne. Moreover, the power he used had been tasted by the Book of Greed. Kill you! Kill you! Kill you! The grey fog failed to attack repeatedly and split into 5. 4 of them poured into the skeleton of the Skeleton Knight and Sebastian, and the last one bombarded Yulia, knocking open the space gate and exiling him far away. Master! The space gate merged, and Yulia's voice stopped abruptly. Wayne was shocked and waved his hand to hold the void, but failed to pull out the Shadow Nightmare. A powerful thought interfered with him through the air. Under the violent collision, he was hit hard, dizzy and almost uncontrollably exited the immortal state. Wayne staggered on the spot, and was startled by a sense of crisis. Without thinking, he rolled on the ground like a hungry tiger, holding the briefcase as a shield. With a bang, the Skeleton Knight holding a sniper rifle fought and retreated, disappearing into the darkness to find a commanding height. All around, the skeleton soldiers ignored the falling boulders and charged, and Oscar and Mono were running in the front. Da-da-da. The 2 Skeleton Knights pulled the trigger, and the firepower of the heavy machine gun made Wayne turn around and run. In the hail of bullets, he didn't care about the so-called Z-shaped dodge method. He rushed out of the blockade at the fastest speed and ran to the west. Bang! Sniper bullets came. Wayne was warned in advance, and fell to the ground. At this moment, the earth roared and shook, and a huge hand bone over 10 meters long drilled out from the ground. Under the ravages of time, the giant's bones faded from golden color and turned into the dim dusk now. The towering body is daunting, and the two dark eye sockets are extremely deep, as if connected to the endless void, revealing unspeakable fear. Sebastian. The golden wizard brought the lunchbox quickly and steadily, and the main feature was a stable emotion without crying or making trouble. After being resurrected by the headless knight, he had the opportunity to show his profound attainments in death magic. He is not an ordinary skeleton soldier, he is a skeleton wizard, who summoned 6 giant skeletons buried underground in one breath. Skeleton knights, skeleton mages, giant skeletons, skeleton soldiers. Wayne was blocked in the corner, surrounded by enemies, and there were snipers and heavy firepower on the opposite side. Ding dang dang, an iron ball was thrown from a distance and rolled down not far from Wayne. Boom! Orange flames exploded, the iron shell shattered, and it was shot in all directions with strong airflow. Wayne crossed his hands in front of his chest, his miner's uniform was torn into pieces, and several iron pieces the size of a fingernail pierced his body. No blood flowed, the pale flesh squirmed, the body swelled and stretched, and the facial features gradually blurred. The flesh in the chest cavity cracked vertically, and the big eyeballs suddenly opened. With a bang, the sniper bullet attacked at high speed, hitting the boneless body and blasting a big hole. White foam squirmed, without a single scar left. Wayne threw the suitcase over his head, and a tentacle drilled out from behind, steadily caught the box, looked around with big eyes, leaned over and broke through to the west. 2 skeleton machine gunners fired crossfire, and the high-temperature bullets rubbed the air, turning into 2 red fire lines, biting Wayne's back. Wayne didn't care, rushed to the front of the skeleton soldiers and jumped into the air, avoiding the bone palm of the giant skeleton. The crossfire followed closely, smashing 7 or 8 skeleton soldiers into pieces, and when it touched the giant skeleton, the bullets bounced off like hitting steel. The giant skeleton had been buried underground for many years. It was unearthed without magic forging and could block the heavy machine gun fire. It can be imagined how terrifying its power was when it was alive. Boom! The huge rock fell in front and crushed the giant skeleton, just making room for Wayne. With the help of supernatural induction, he moved quickly in the collapsed ruins, and every dodge was easy. In the back, the pursuit speed of the skeleton soldiers was too slow, even the 2 elite soldiers Oscar and Mono were left far behind. The skeleton mage held up his stick and staggered, the magic circle under his feet spread out, as if he was about to cast an offensive magic that covered a large area. Boom! The boulder fell, the skeleton mage was silent, the magic circle light dissipated, and a bang rose up into the sky with black smoke. Several skeleton giants staggered, and their skeletons fell to the ground. Among the pursuers, only 2 skeleton knights could keep up with Wayne. They ran out of bullets, galloped on horseback and threw grenades. Wayne roared all the way, and saw the house where Mona was hiding from afar, and stopped suddenly. A sniper bullet passed in front of him, rubbing his head and taking away a piece of white foam. "You are the most dangerous." The big eyeballs turned and looked at the commanding heights where the bullets came from. Wayne spread his wings behind him, his white hands and feet merged into his torso, and the 6 flesh wings flapped, and he rose from the ground with the help of the thin wind element. Looking from afar, there is a big eyeball with 3 pairs of flesh wings, and there are tentacles wriggling in the gray mist behind it. It's very weird. Wayne flew in the air, avoiding the constantly falling boulders, but his speed was not fast. The skeleton knight at the commanding heights shot and moved to another place, and now he has disappeared into the darkness. It's a pity that a knight as charming as him, no matter how deep he hides, is as bright and outstanding as a firefly in the dark. Wayne saw the opponent's hiding place, folded his wings and accelerated his fall. Before the sniper rifle could be raised, his tentacles rolled up and snatched him away. Get it, you! After taking away the gun, Wayne threw the sniper off the high ground with one tentacle, flapped his wings and flew towards Mona's position. I have no intention of fighting, and there is no need to fight. The collapsed ruins will bury everything. The giant-eyed flesh wing came to the room where Mona was sleeping, and a tentacle rolled out, wrapping around her voluptuous waist. Wayne kept flapping his wings and flew towards the high altitude where the moonlight was. The mountain collapsed and the cracks became wider and wider. When he reached the light, he no longer had to worry about the constantly collapsing mountain rocks. The earth shook violently, and terrifying forces raged in all directions. The buildings in the giant city fell one after another like dominoes, raising huge clouds of dust and gravel. Huge cracks opened in the road, swallowing up the ruins and creating more ruins. The surrounding mountain walls collapsed, forming spectacular mudslides and waterfalls, burying the entire ruins. The huge roar woke up Mona, and she weakly opened her eyes. The feeling of weightlessness made her subconsciously look up. A huge eye, one glance will be unforgettable for a lifetime. The pale moonlight casts a layer of hazy light on the 3 pairs of fleshy wings. When the wings flutter, little rays of light scatter like water droplets. Angel! Mona murmured and closed her eyes tiredly. Although the process was wrong, the result was right. She completed the task and found the angel who came to the world. After the earthquake stopped, Wayne took Mona and landed on the edge of the mountain cliff. The center of the elemental mountain collapsed, and the mountains on all sides were higher, like a cauldron filled with the messy ruins inside. Wayne's body squirmed and changed back to its original appearance. The suitcase fell to the ground. He glanced at it and ignored it. He closed his eyes to sense whether there was any surviving skeleton below. The area was too large for him to confirm clearly, so he tried to grab the shadow nightmare. Success. Master, are you okay? Yulia came with the shadow nightmare and was relieved to see that Wayne was fine, just without clothes. Wayne kicked the box next to his feet. Yulia understood and opened the portal to send him away. Not far away, still in Silent Hill. Wayne held the shadow nightmare in his hands, the ruby at the end of the sword's hilt flashed, and the decaying power of death accelerated the flow of time, causing all the bones in the ruins to rot into mud. All evidence is gone. This one is really stable. After finishing these things, Wayne sheathed his long sword, let Yulia leave first, and sat tiredly on Mona's lap. After resting for a moment, Wayne put the man on his shoulders and wandered towards the mining area. Hurry up and find your clothes, otherwise Shuoda Wopen will lose his friends. Contrary to Wayne's expectation, a fierce battle seemed to have taken place at the entrance to the collapsed mine, with craters and corpses everywhere. Judging from the miners' clothing of the deceased, we can tell that they are members of the Church of Death guarding the entrance. Wayne searched around and soon found Kerr sitting slumped behind a big tree. After a hard battle, he eliminated a silver mage from the Death Church and was already paralyzed from exhaustion. Kerr heard the sound, opened his eyes and saw the unsightly sight of, and then looked at Mona being carried on his shoulders, and couldn't help but complain, "What's going on? Is the battle between you two so tragic?" "Well, there are too many people, so I can't do it without taking off my clothes." "So, you won," Kerr said in disbelief. "How is it possible?" "There was civil strife, and they suddenly went crazy and killed each other." Wayne told the story of the causes and consequences. There were too many people in the Death Church, so he did not dare to fight and took Mona far away. When he was about to die heroically, the people on the other side went crazy and everyone died. This answer was very magical, and there was nothing wrong with it. Kerr didn't think Wayne could defeat so many magicians, so he asked instead, "Where's the slate?" "I didn't see the stone slab. It should be buried in the elemental mountain." Wayne looked helpless and patted his butt. "If it weren't for the large number of people, the tight time limit, and Mona holding back, I would definitely be able to get the slate. This trip would be in vain, so I have to pay more."